Donc, bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bon après-midi, mesdames et messieurs. Je voudrais vous partager mes chaleureux mots de bienvenue à vous tous, nos honorables invités. Merci d'avoir sacrifié votre précieux temps pour être présent, soit en ligne ou dans vos locaux, du Bénin, de la RDC, du Niger, du Sénégal ou du Togo. Je m'appelle Madame Dessam Rachel. Je suis la directrice de la pratique de santé dans la division de santé mondiale chez Chimonix International. C'est un honneur pour moi de me trouver ici avec vous pour lancer ce sommet GS1 sur les soins de santé en Afrique francophone 2022. Donc, prochaine diapo, s'il vous plaît. Donc, avant de commencer, permettez-moi de vous rappeler de quelques règles d'étiquette pour notre réunion. Ce sommet, c'est un événement très interactif. Donc, n'hésitez pas de poser des questions, de partager vos expériences, de participer donc à tout esprit. Utilisez la fonctionnalité de chat pour poser des questions ou des idées. Et si vous posez une question dans le chat, veuillez indiquer à qui s'adresse la question. Si vous souhaitez poser une question à l'oral, utilisez la fonctionnalité Raise Hand pour vous lever la main sur Zoom et un modérateur vous invitera à prendre la parole. Veuillez éteindre vos caméras et rester en mode silence si vous n'avez pas été invité par le modérateur à prendre la parole. Pour accéder à la traduction simultanée, cliquez sur le globe dans le bar du menu et sélectionnez le canal français ou anglais. Avancez les diapos, s'il vous plaît, pour qu'ils puissent voir quelques images pour vous guider comment améliorer votre expérience Zoom. D'accord. Donc, ce sommet virtuel de 3 jours a été organisé par le Bureau mondial de GS1 et USAID, Global Health Supply Chain Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order. Voici quelques objectifs qui se trouvent aussi dans vos dépliants. Donc, on va réintroduire le GS1 dans le contexte de vos régions et mieux comprendre les implications et le progrès potentiel dans l'adaptation de ces normes mondiales. Et donc, nous allons aussi partager un deep dive, donc aller bien profondément dans certaines ressources clés et comment les utiliser. Donc, nous allons avancer les diapos, merci. Donc, voici l'agenda qui se trouve aussi en détail dans vos dépliants. Au cours de ce sommet, nous espérons que les dirigeants et les représentants des ministères de la Santé dans les pays francophones de l'Afrique de l'Ouest et du Centre se renseigneront sur les normes mondiales dans la chaîne d'approvisionnement, c'est-à-dire les GS1. En outre, nous espérons permettre aux dirigeants et représentants d'avoir l'occasion de découvrir comment les normes GS1 peuvent améliorer la protection des patients ainsi que l'efficacité et la sécurité de la chaîne d'approvisionnement. Et pour terminer, nous vous inviterons, des gouvernements sélectionnés, à présenter vos expériences et le progrès réalisé dans la mise en œuvre de diverses activités fondamentales pour l'adoption et l'utilisation de GS1. Prochaine. Donc, voilà, jour 1, 2 et 3. Donc, à cette occasion, je tiens à souhaiter la bienvenue à nos premiers panélistes, Dr Da El Hadj Sidi, Dr Rami Gergui et Madame Géraldine Lizalde Bonnet. Donc, en premier, Dr Da El Hadj Sidi est le directeur technique du projet USAID Global Health Supply Chain Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order. Il est pharmacien et spécialiste de la gestion des produits de santé avec plus de 20 ans d'expérience dans la gestion des médicaments essentiels, les systèmes et politiques pharmaceutiques et la gestion de la logistique et de la chaîne d'approvisionnement. Dr. Sidi a aidé les bénéficiaires principaux du Fonds mondial et l'instance de coordination nationale, c'est-à-dire le CCM, à assurer une exécution rapide et appropriée de l'assistance technique dans plus de 61 pays. Il a été conseiller technique au ministère de la Santé de Mauritanie et directeur général adjoint de la centrale d'achat des médicaments, CAMEC. Deuxième, Dr. Rami Gergui. Il est conseiller principal en technologie de l'information USAID GS2. Dans son rôle actuel, il est conseiller dans les pays en ce qui concerne l'automatisation dans leur système de chaîne d'approvisionnement de santé publique au niveau national. Et il supervise également les systèmes MIS mondiaux de l'USAID pour la chaîne d'approvisionnement. Il a plus de 30 ans d'expérience professionnelle dans le domaine des technologies d'information et de la communication. Il a contribué à la transformation et la modernisation de plusieurs grandes entreprises et agences gouvernementales dans divers secteurs, notamment les télécommunications, la finance, la santé, la défense et le développement pour les secteurs publics et privés aux États-Unis et aussi à l'étranger. Il est aussi professeur adjoint à Georgetown. Troisième, Madame Géraldine Lizalde Bonnet est le vice-président des soins de santé du Bureau mondial GS1. Elle dirige GS1 Healthcare au Bureau mondial GS1. Elle travaille avec ses collègues du monde entier pour améliorer la sécurité des patients et l'efficacité de la chaîne d'approvisionnement à l'échelle mondiale grâce aux normes GS1 pour AIDC, la synchronisation des données et la traçabilité. Juriste de formation, Madame Géraldine a dirigé pendant 10 ans l'équipe GS1 Healthcare Global Public Policy Work Team et a commencé sa carrière dans le secteur privé, complétée par plusieurs années la Commission européenne à la Direction générale de la santé et des consommateurs. Donc, c'est un grand plaisir je suis ravie de passer la parole à vous, Dr. Sidi.
Merci beaucoup, Rachel. J'espère que vous m'entendez bien.
Oui, nous t'entendons.
OK, merci beaucoup. Donc, permettez-moi tout d'abord de souhaiter la bienvenue aux participants ici présents à Cotonou, mais aussi dans la région et au-delà. Donc, le projet Global Health Supply Chain Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order, dont l'un des objectifs est de renforcer les chaînes d'approvisionnement dans certains pays de la région francophone en Afrique de l'Ouest, est heureux de vous accueillir dans cette importante rencontre pour discuter de la problématique de la traçabilité des produits pharmaceutiques. Comme vous le savez mieux que moi, les faux médicaments et les médicaments sous standard constituent un fléau majeur dans la région et un problème de santé publique. Donc, nous avons voulu ici regrouper les experts dans le domaine pour discuter de comment trouver des solutions à ce problème de faux médicaments, comment améliorer la traçabilité des médicaments dans le pays en utilisant les standards GS1. Donc, nous vous demandons à participer activement et, comme l'a dit Rachel, de façon interactive, parce que vous aurez à suivre ici un partage d'expérience des pays qui ont déjà commencé la mise en œuvre des standards GS1. Vous allez aussi pouvoir avoir accès et savoir comment utiliser l'ensemble des ressources qui sont disponibles, qui sont traduites aussi en français, et disponibles en anglais, mais traduites aussi en français, pour mieux affronter cette problématique. Donc, Ceci aussi vous permettra de pouvoir préparer des feuilles de route par pays pour améliorer la traçabilité des produits en utilisant les standards GS1. Nous voulons vraiment que vous commencez sur une bonne base pour les pays qui viennent de commencer cette traçabilité en utilisant les standards GS1, ou bien pour les pays qui ont déjà commencé de profiter des expériences des autres pays dans ce cadre d'échange d'expériences et de leçons apprises. Donc, encore une fois, nous vous remercions pour votre participation et nous restons à votre disposition pour vous aider dans cette activité. Merci beaucoup. Over to you, Rachel.
Merci. Donc, je passe la parole maintenant à Dr. Rami Gergi.
Hi, good morning and good evening, everyone. So I'm not sure if the cam is working. Okay, thanks. Okay. Hi, good morning, good evening, everyone. I really would like to thank you for joining us today and for the next couple of days in this exciting summit. I also would like to thank the Francophone Task Order and GS1 for organizing this summit. So back in 2014, USAID has been introduced to the GS1 standard, and we quickly realized its value in addressing one of the major problems that both at the USAID and the country are suffering from in terms of the lack of end-to-end data visibility. And also we realized that the importance of traceability in achieving supply chain efficiency and patient safety. Over the years, and starting from 2017, USAID started to mandate that all of the USAID procured commodity to be barcoded with the GS1 standard. And it has been a long journey and a movement that other donors and countries, several countries, started to adopt. And as our colleague from Ethiopia is always saying, that the journey for the GS1 adoption is a marathon, not a sprint. And now you can see that from the effort that has been done over the last several years, that almost 80% of all health commodity that received in countries are barcoded with the GS1 standard. There have been a lot of progress and also a lot of challenge in this journey. We have several countries in Africa that adopted GS1 standard, implemented or had a traceability strategy, and start to have the foundation built for a traceability system. So I think during this summit, it will be a great opportunity to share experience. And I really strongly encourage everyone to be to have it more interactive, to ask questions, to learn from each other. The journey for traceability and GS1 standard is really have a lot of details, and it can only be achieved if we can all leverage each other experience and knowledge. So I'm excited about this opportunity. You're going to hear from multiple countries, from multiple experts. So again, I strongly encourage you to have it as interactive as you can and to ask any question that you may have. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Geraldine, who is the Vice President for GS1 Healthcare sector, and who have been supporting us in all of this journey since 2014. So, hand it over to you, Geraldine.
Merci beaucoup, Rami. Merci à tous pour votre confiance pour organiser ce sommet pour l'Afrique francophone que nous avions à l'esprit depuis longtemps, mais il nous manquait toujours les opportunités pour finalement pouvoir l'organiser. Donc pour moi, c'est le premier événement où je suis assise ici en tant que vice-présidente pour GS1 Healthcare. Et je voudrais qu'on ait tous une pensée très chaleureuse pour Ulrike Kreiser, qui a vraiment porté ce projet du fond de son cœur et avec un grand succès. Et l'Éthiopie en est le témoin aujourd'hui. On vous a parlé des standards GS1, on va encore vous en parler pendant 3 jours. Et l'idée vraiment, c'est que vous repartiez avec une boîte à outils. Derrière ce code barre, il y a plein de différents acronymes, plein de différents détails avec lesquels on va essayer de vous familiariser et de vraiment vous montrer que nous sommes tous là pour vous aider. Si vous devez retenir une chose de ces 3 jours, c'est l'idée de collaborer, apprendre des bonnes pratiques des autres pays, en Afrique, mais dans le monde entier, parce que les standards GS1 sont des standards internationaux. S'aider et s'entraider, et vous aurez une session sur qu'est-ce qu'on fait les autres pays, qu'est-ce qu'on fait les donneurs, qu'est-ce que les solution providers peuvent faire aussi. Et vraiment, en gardant ça à l'esprit, je pense que la seule chose qui nous restera à faire, c'est de décider comment est-ce qu'on va continuer sur base de ces feuilles de route nationales, mais tous regardant dans la même direction pour être sûr qu'en mettant en œuvre les standards GS1 et en travaillant ensemble, on arrive à vraiment faire une différence pour l'Afrique. Donc tout simplement, je propose de lancer la conférence et je vous encourage à interagir comme vous le faites déjà beaucoup en utilisant le chat pour que ces 3 jours soient vraiment un échange et qu'on ait le meilleur de nous tous au final après cette conférence.
Bonjour, bonjour à tous. Merci à ceux qui se sont présentés. Je vais nous mener dans l'introduction des autres participants. Juste une petite chose avant de commencer les introductions. Je voudrais vous rappeler qu'il y a un petit globe interprétation dans la barre de Zoom pour laquelle, si c'est en anglais, vous pouvez changer pour écouter la langue que vous voudriez écouter. Donc, voilà, merci à tous. Oui, je suis Chloé Peebles, en charge de communication pour le projet Francophone Task Order. Nous allons passer aux introductions des autres participants sur l'appel. Pour nos collègues qui se trouvent et qui sont ensemble dans divers coins du monde, je vais appeler votre pays. Quand j'appelle votre pays, je vous demande de choisir une personne qui peut introduire votre salle en plus ou moins 1 minute. Et pour ceux qui se connectent virtuellement depuis votre maison ou votre bureau, je vous demande de vous introduire dans le chat. Voilà, donc pour commencer, est-ce que vous pourriez allumer votre caméra et vous présenter rapidement en 1 minute, s'il vous plaît?
Merci Chloé. Donc pour le Bénin, je suis Ghislaine Didjo, pharmacien. Je suis le directeur pays du projet Global Health Supply Chain Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order. Nous sommes dans la salle avec Dr Mourchidat, donc notre conseiller technique à la chaîne d'approvisionnement, Mylène Adingou, notre spécialiste IT, Valentin Tosset du service IT. Nous sommes avec Dr Da, que vous avez entendu tout à l'heure, le directeur technique au siège. Et nous avons l'honneur d'avoir dans la salle donc, le colonel Chabi, directeur de la BRP, l'Agence béninoise de régulation pharmaceutique. Et Boris Ouessou,
Merci, merci le Bénin. Je vois qu'il y a quelques petits problèmes de connexion, mais on va continuer. Maintenant, si je peux demander à nos amis en RDC d'allumer votre vidéo et de désigner une personne qui peut présenter la salle, je vous en prie. OK. Je pense que peut-être nos collègues en RDC sont en train de se connecter. Dans ce cas-là, je vais passer au pays suivant, au Niger. Pourriez-vous allumer votre caméra et avoir une personne qui présente votre pays en plus ou moins 1 minute?
Bonjour Chloé, bonjour tout le monde. Donc, je suis Dr Idi Abdou, je suis pharmacien, technical advisor donc, pour le projet Global Health Supply Chain, Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order. Je suis dans la salle à côté de moi, nous avons la directrice de la pharmacie et de la médecine traditionnelle du ministère de la Santé du Niger, Dr Barira, accompagné par Dr Charles May, qui est le directeur pays de notre projet, donc notre directeur régional donc, basé à Ouaga, qui est à mission au Niger. Donc, je suis aussi donc avec la représentante de la direction de la planification familiale. Nous avons Madame Balkissou avec nous, donc, qui représente cette direction. Et donc, à ma gauche, j'ai mes 2 collaborateurs qui sont donc les conseillers régionaux de notre projet. Monsieur Ousseini Cheibou, qui est le coordonnateur à Maradi, et Ibrahim Salifou, qui est notre coordonnateur au niveau de la région des Anders. Donc, je suis accompagné donc, dans l'organisation de cette activité avec Madame Zenabou, qui est notre comptable donc, au niveau de notre projet, donc, qui a organisé la logistique et tout ce qui s'ensuit par rapport à cette activité. Merci à vous, Chloé.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Et maintenant, je vais demander au Sénégal si vous pouvez allumer votre vidéo et une personne présente votre salle.
Oui, bonjour. Je suis Monsieur Ndoye, Salou Ndoye, je suis le président de GS1 Sénégal. Je ne suis malheureusement pas à Dakar actuellement, mais il y a tout le staff et les représentants du ministère qui sont dans la salle. Et j'ai demandé au responsable technique qui est sur place d'allumer la caméra pour permettre de voir les présents qui sont dans la salle. Pour l'instant, on a un certain nombre de ministères qui sont attendus. Actuellement, il y a présentement, en plus du staff de GS1 Sénégal, le docteur Nian, conseiller technique au niveau du ministère de la Santé qui est présent. Et les autres 6 autres sont attendus, ils ne sont pas encore arrivés. Et c'est avec intérêt que nous allons participer à cette réunion, puisque nous sommes dans un stade initial du processus. Et ça va être l'opportunité pour nous d'apprendre de ceux qui ont déjà initié ce programme, pour voir quelle est la meilleure façon pour le Sénégal d'entrer dans ce système de traçabilité, d'autant plus qu'on a eu des événements malheureux qui justifient notre intérêt pour un tel programme. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Ensuite, si possible, maintenant, je vais demander à nos collègues du Togo si vous pouvez allumer votre vidéo et désigner une personne pour présenter votre salle.
Bonjour Chloé, bonjour à tous. Moi, je suis Dr Ouedraogo Adjiratou, la chef d'équipe de Global Health Supply Chain Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order du Togo. Je suis accompagnée de l'équipe FTO de François Badjadouna, l'analyste, le data analyst, Chao Bleza, qui est l'inventory management spécialiste, et Nabagou, qui est l'expert laboratoire. Et on a également le ministère de la Santé qui est fortement représenté. Et je vais laisser la parole au directeur de la pharmacie qui est actuellement présent ici pour introduire l'équipe du ministère de la Santé.
Très bien, merci. Je m'appelle Atani Nyansa, je suis le directeur de la pharmacie du médicament et des laboratoires du ministère de la Santé, de l'hygiène publique et de l'accès universel aux soins. Alors, exceptionnellement, parce qu'on est 24, hein, merci à Guy de nous avoir permis d'avoir ce si grand nombre. Je ne vais pas prononcer de nom, mais je vais les classer par entité de provenance. Ce sera tout aussi efficace. Évidemment, au moment où ils prendront la parole, certainement qu'ils peuvent se présenter pour que ce soit plus précis. Donc, nous sommes donc 24 et en ce moment, nous sommes 20 dans la salle. Alors, il y a Agui vient de présenter l'équipe FTO. Il y a le programme national de lutte contre la tuberculose. Ils peuvent lever la main. Hein. La tuberculose. Voilà. Si tu peux la montrer. Elle est juste à côté de toi. La caméra? Ah, il y a une qui est derrière. Pourquoi elle est derrière? Bon, très bien. OK. Le programme national de lutte contre le paludisme, elle est juste à côté de toi. Ils sont juste tous les deux à côté de toi, là-bas. Très bien. Le programme national de lutte contre le sida, 3 personnes, théoriquement aussi. Oh là, il a levé la main. Il n'y a plus personne? Bon, il en reste 2 qui vont arriver. La direction de la santé maternelle et infantile, ils sont 2, voilà, côte à côte aussi, les 2. Il y a 2 pharmaciens hospitaliers, puisque c'est très important aussi. Il y a une seule qui est en ce moment-là, elle est là. Lève-toi, docteur Pacho. On te voit, d'accord. Il y a la CAMEC Togo, 5 en théorie. Vous pouvez lever la main. Berger, Abilé, très bien. Honorine, et puis enfin, la direction de la pharmacie du médicament et des laboratoires. Je lève la main avec eux, même si je ne sers pas à grand-chose. Hein. C'est eux qui font le travail. Merci beaucoup, Agui.
Merci, Chloé. Voici présenter l'équipe du Togo.
Merci beaucoup, l'équipe au Togo. Maintenant, je pense que nos collègues de RDC en RDC sont de retour sur l'appel. Si je peux vous demander d'allumer votre caméra et de désigner une personne pour faire une présentation rapide de votre salle. Non, désolé, on ne vous entend pas. Je pense qu'il y a un problème avec le son parce que je ne vous entends pas. Alors, je suis désolée RDC, je ne vous entends pas. Peut-être que peut-être que demain, nous pourrons, une fois que vous avez réglé vos problèmes de micro, nous pourrons faire votre introduction. Mais maintenant, nous allons faire une photo de groupe. Donc, nous demandons que tout le monde allume leur caméra. Voilà, la photo de groupe virtuel. Allumez vos caméras, souriez. Kimara, je pense que le mieux serait que tu ne présentes plus le PowerPoint pour qu'on puisse voir toutes les photos, toutes les vidéos. Parfait. Et donc, voilà, si possible, tout le monde.
Est-ce que vous pouvez autoriser certains bureaux à GS1 Sénégal? Je crois qu'ils ont un souci avec leur caméra. Est-ce que vous pouvez vérifier à votre niveau si vous pouvez leur permettre d'activer ça, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, aucun problème, Saliou, je vais le faire.
Voilà. Super, merci. Super, super. Contente de voir toutes vos toutes les figures différentes. Parfait. Alors, nous attendons juste une minute que tout le monde puisse allumer leur caméra. Ok, si vous pouvez sourire, on va faire un screenshot. Et voilà. Super. Voilà, ça nous fait quelques belles têtes. Voilà, maintenant, je vais passer la parole à Nouran qui va ouvrir la première session. Merci beaucoup.
Bien sûr. Oh, sorry, I'm going to speak in English. Thank you, Chloe. So, for our French colleagues, I've been monitoring the chat. I see that there's a bit of back and forth with the translation. So I will speak briefly in English. So you have the globe functionality at the bottom. So please use that to change the language. We have live translation, live interpretation rather. So you can listen both in English and in French. So I'll try my best as the moderator for today to remind you before the next speaker to change your language. All right. So let me start by introducing myself. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening for some of you. My name is Nouran Idris and I work as healthcare manager for GS1 Global Office. And I will be your day one moderator. So the idea that we have for day one is to be able to introduce you to the concepts of GS1 standards. In fact, I have been in touch with many of you over the past few weeks. I have offered some online training that is available within the GS1 e-Academy. So there's still a chance, there was no deadline. So if you're still interested in accessing the courses, don't hesitate to contact me. I will leave my email in the chat. So without further ado, Kimara, if you can go to the next slide, we'd like to reintroduce our first speaker, and that's Geraldine Misald-Bonnet. She is the Senior Vice President of GS1 Healthcare, as she introduced herself earlier. What Geraldine will do over the next few minutes is just summarize very briefly GS1 Healthcare, what GS1 Healthcare is all about, what GS1 standards are, and hopefully that will provide us some platform to be able to grasp the concepts over the next few days, rather, the next 3 days. So as a reminder, we have the chat functionality and we have the Q&A functionality. If you have any questions, as Geraldine is speaking, please put them in the Q&A. And then we will take them if we have time at the end. If not, we will follow up with you later on. If you have any thoughts, any reflections based on what is going on in your country, please use the chat functionality. Otherwise, it's a very interactive session, so please do not remain with your questions. Please share them forward. So with this, I hand over to Geraldine. Geraldine, over to you. And sorry, Geraldine will speak in French. Her slides are in English. So for our English colleagues, please go to the English channel because Geraldine will speak in French. So this is your warning. For the French colleagues, come back to the main language, main room. Then you will be able to follow the conversations live. All right, Geraldine, over to you.
Merci beaucoup, Nouran. Je suppose que c'est toi qui avance mes slides. OK, alors on peut commencer. L'idée, c'est vraiment de vous présenter une brève introduction, donc un petit apéritif sur qu'est-ce que c'est GS1. Ensuite, de quoi il s'agit quand on parle des standards GS1. Et puis finalement, vous présenter ce qu'on a fait, une feuille de route pour la traçabilité des médicaments qui est utilisée à travers le monde et qui sert vraiment de checklist quand on doit mettre en œuvre les standards GS1 pour la traçabilité. Et enfin, je vais vous présenter les différentes activités qu'on a eues, notamment avec les donneurs. On commence par pourquoi GS1 ? Vous allez être étonnés, mais en fait, vous connaissez tous les standards GS1. J'imagine que vous avez tous déjà vu un code barre avec des lignes sur un produit. Vous voyez ici des photos et vous retrouvez ces codes barres. En fait, c'est ça, GS1. On est l'organisation secrète la mieux cachée, mais tout le monde nous utilise. En pratique, pourquoi est-ce qu'on a besoin de standards GS1 ? Dans la santé, la raison principale, c'est parce qu'il y a des réglementations pour la traçabilité des médicaments, par exemple, qui exigent l'utilisation des standards GS1 pour l'identification, pour le marquage et pour l'échange des données relatives à ces médicaments. Et on a vu Rami tout à l'heure, USAID et d'autres organisations et des donneurs ont aussi des appels d'offres qui exigent l'utilisation de ces standards. Donc, le principal driver pour l'utilisation des standards GS1, c'est la réglementation et les appels d'offres. Et pourquoi est-ce qu'on retrouve ça dans la réglementation et dans les appels d'offres? Tout simplement parce que l'utilisation des standards GS1 est un outil très efficace pour lutter contre la contrefaçon des médicaments. Ça permet l'identification et l'authentification des médicaments. Donc, on peut vraiment avoir une vision d'ensemble sur la chaîne d'approvisionnement et voir où les médicaments vont. Mais on peut aussi voir ça dans l'autre sens, c'est-à-dire s'il y a un problème avec un médicament qui a déjà été mis sur le marché, on peut faire la chaîne d'approvisionnement en marche arrière et retrouver ces médicaments pour, encore une fois, protéger les patients. Je vais le répéter plusieurs fois dans ma présentation, mais la mission de GS1, c'est vraiment garantir la sécurité des patients. Et l'idée, vous l'avez comprise, le fait que nos standards soient internationaux, le fait que les chaînes d'approvisionnement soient internationales, le fait que les patients bougent d'un pays à l'autre, même si les réglementations sont nationales et les appels d'offres ont aussi vocation à soutenir un pays en particulier, l'utilisation d'un système unique à travers le monde simplifie toute cette mise en œuvre. On passe au slide suivant, qui est juste un petit rappel. Et je l'ai emprunté à USAID et à PSM, puisque en fait, c'est leur propre présentation des bénéfices de l'utilisation des standards GS1. Et je trouve qu'il est toujours intéressant, plutôt que moi-même, en tant que représentante de GS1, vous expliquer pourquoi est-ce que nos standards servent à quelque chose, d'utiliser les mots d'un de nos utilisateurs, et dans ce cas-là, c'est USAID. C'est la même chose que ce que je viens de vous présenter, donc je propose que l'on passe à la diapo suivante et vous aurez les diapos, donc vous pourrez vous y référer plus tard. Je vous ai dit que vous utilisiez les codes barres et les codes barres avec des traits en particulier lorsque vous faites par exemple du shopping pour votre épicerie quotidienne. Dans les médicaments, à quoi est-ce que ressemble ce code barre? Il ressemble à ce qu'on appelle un data matrix. Ce ne sont plus des traits, ce sont des points. Et dans ce data matrix, on inclut un identifiant unique. Je reviendrai là-dessus tout à l'heure. Mais on inclut aussi des informations qui sont importantes pour la traçabilité du produit. Donc, le numéro de lot et le numéro de série. Et enfin, comme on parle de médicaments, on inclut aussi de l'information qui est relative à la sécurité du patient et à être sûr que le médicament soit encore efficace, d'où l'idée de cette date d'expiration. Et c'est vraiment un aspect que l'on retrouve de manière harmonisée à travers le monde. Pour les fabricants, c'est important parce que ça leur permet d'avoir une cohérence dans la façon dont ils identifient et marquent les produits. Et pour les régulateurs, c'est aussi important parce que ça leur permet éventuellement de bénéficier des initiatives qui ont été faites dans d'autres pays parce que, comme je viens de le dire, les frontières sont poreuses et les chaînes d'approvisionnement sont globales. On va passer à la diapo suivante. Qu'est-ce que GS1? On a compris pourquoi, c'est important. Nous sommes une organisation internationale qui développe des standards. Nous sommes sans but lucratif et nous sommes présents à travers le monde. Nous sommes utilisés par à peu près 2 millions d'entreprises dans plus de 150 pays, avec, dans certains pays, un bureau local qui est là pour vous aider. Donc, vous avez entendu le Sénégal, nous avons aussi un bureau en Afrique, nous avons, en Côte d'Ivoire, nous avons aussi un bureau au Cameroun, par exemple. Et cela représente à peu près 6 milliards de petits bips par jour. On passe à la diapo suivante. Ce qu'il est important, et je vais insister là-dessus, c'est de retenir l'idée du sans but lucratif. Nous sommes reconnus aussi par les Nations Unies comme une organisation non gouvernementale, nous sommes neutres. C'est-à-dire que nous ne représentons pas les intérêts de l'industrie ou les intérêts privés d'une entreprise particulière. Sans but lucratif, neutre et internationaux. On passe à la diapo suivante. Et on va maintenant faire un zoom sur ce qui se passe dans la santé, parce que nos standards sont utilisés vraiment dans tous les secteurs. On trouve nos standards pour identifier des bananes, on les trouve pour identifier des conteneurs sur des bateaux, on les trouve aussi pour identifier des médicaments, des dispositifs médicaux, des vaccins. Et dans la santé, si on fait un clic sur cette diapo, l'idée était vraiment, il y a 17 ans, de développer un groupe de travail à travers le monde qui rejoint tous les principales parties prenantes et qui se sont mis ensemble pour 4 principaux objectifs. Le premier, la sécurité des patients. Le deuxième, garantir que les chaînes d'approvisionnement soient sûres et efficaces. Ensuite, la traçabilité, cette idée de visibilité du produit dans la chaîne d'approvisionnement, de l'endroit où il est fabriqué jusqu'à l'endroit où il est utilisé. Et enfin, les données qui sont relatives à ces produits. On a des standards qui supportent tout ça, et je vais revenir en détail sur ces standards-là. On passe à la diapo suivante. J'ai parlé d'une communauté au niveau global qui engage toutes les parties prenantes. Et si on clique une nouvelle fois sur ce slide, on va voir que l'idée est vraiment d'engager les fabricants. On peut encore cliquer, je suis désolée, il y a des animations qui sont un peu lentes, voilà. D'avoir l'intégralité de la chaîne d'approvisionnement. Donc, on a des fabricants, on a des distributeurs, on a des solution providers, on a aussi des parties prenantes pour la logistique. Et l'idée est vraiment que chacun parle le même langage. On passe à la diapo suivante. J'ai mentionné nos bureaux. Je travaille au Bureau Monde et je disais aussi dans mon introduction qu'on avait eu beaucoup de mal ou on a attendu longtemps avant d'impliquer l'Afrique francophone et c'est la valeur ajoutée de nos bureaux locaux. C'est-à-dire qu'eux parlent le langage qui est parlé dans un pays en particulier, ils connaissent le marché, ils connaissent les acteurs principaux et ils sont vraiment là au jour le jour pour accompagner la mise en œuvre des standards GS1 de manière harmonisée, quel que soit le pays, mais avec une approche nationale qui fait vraiment la différence. Et enfin, très important pour la santé, si on passe à la diapo suivante, les hôpitaux. Ceux qui sont au contact du patient tous les jours et pour qui scanner un code barre n'est pas forcément très intuitif, parce que si j'étais docteur, j'aurais plutôt un stéthoscope qu'une douchette pour scanner des codes barres dans la main, mais ça peut vraiment faire une différence en termes de sécurité des données, en termes de temps qu'ils peuvent gagner et passer avec les patients. On voit que tous les hôpitaux qui ont pour l'instant fait l'effort d'utiliser les standards GS1, parce que ce n'est pas si facile, ont réussi à vraiment retrouver tous les bénéfices qu'on leur avait décrits. On travaille aussi avec d'autres standards. Et si on passe à la dernière slide pour cette partie d'introduction, voici un petit peu le microcosme ou la galaxie des standards. Et vous connaissez certains noms. CEN, qui est au niveau européen, le comité qui s'occupe de la standardisation. C'est l'équivalent de ISO, que vous voyez aussi sur ce slide, mais au niveau international, et plein d'autres organisations, et aussi, bien sûr, des groupements tels que IHF pour les hôpitaux, tels que FPIA pour les fédérations de fabricants de médicaments au niveau européen, etc. WHO, vous entendrez tout à l'heure l'un des représentants qui parlera. Donc ça, c'était vraiment une première partie sur qu'est-ce que GS1 et pourquoi est-ce que les standards sont importants. Voyons qu'est-ce que c'est qu'un standard quand on parle d'un standard GS1, et ce sera la prochaine partie de la présentation. Donc Noura, il va falloir que tu avances 2 fois. Encore une fois. Alors, premièrement, comment on développe les standards? Je me suis demandé si je faisais une question ouverte ou si je vous donnais déjà la réponse, et finalement, je vous donne la réponse. Noura et moi travaillons à GS1 et nos collègues des MO aussi, mais ce n'est pas nous qui développons les standards. Les standards sont développés de manière démocratique avec tous nos utilisateurs. Et pour ça, on a un processus harmonisé et ouvert au niveau mondial pour décider si un standard est nécessaire et si oui, comment est-ce qu'il va être défini. C'est une plateforme toujours neutre, j'insiste et je me répète, une plateforme globale et une plateforme à but non lucratif. Nos standards sont disponibles en ligne. Tout simplement, vous pouvez les lire. Si vous avez des problèmes d'insomnie, ça marche très bien. Et ce qui est important de souligner, c'est que dans la santé, ce processus-là implique vraiment l'intégralité des parties prenantes, y compris les hôpitaux et les organisations réglementaires. On passe à la diapo suivante. De quoi parle-t-on quand on parle du système international de standards GS1? On parle de 3 choses. On parle de l'identification, on parle de la capture et on parle du partage. L'identification est la partie que vous voyez en bleu sur cette diapo. Et l'idée est vraiment d'utiliser des chiffres ou des lettres, ou les deux, et de les combiner de manière unique au niveau global afin d'identifier différentes choses. On peut identifier des lieux avec des GLN, on peut identifier des produits avec des GTIN, on peut identifier des conteneurs ou des unités logistiques avec des SSCC, et on peut aussi identifier un service qui est donné à un patient par un docteur ou reçu par le patient avec des GSRN. Donc l'idée est vraiment de reconstruire tous les éléments de la chaîne de soins et d'approvisionnement et de pouvoir à chaque fois identifier chaque acteur ou chaque lieu avec un identifiant unique. Et comme vous le savez, si vous fermez vos yeux, vous vous rappelez un peu ce qu'il y avait sur votre paquet de céréales ce matin, c'est beaucoup de chiffres. Et ce n'est pas toujours facile de retranscrire ces chiffres de manière correcte, d'où l'idée de capturer ces identifiants dans un support automatique, et ça, c'est le code barre. Donc, vous voyez dans la partie rose le deuxième pilier du standard GS1, qui est la partie relative au code barre. Tous ces codes barres-là sont référencés par ISO, et pour les médicaments, vous reconnaissez sans doute le data matrix, qui est plus ou moins au milieu de la diapo, et qui est vraiment le code barre recommandé et requis pour l'identification des médicaments. Une fois qu'on a identifié quelque chose, une fois qu'on a trouvé un système pratique pour échanger cette identification, on parle le même langage. Et c'est la dernière partie système GS1 qui est la partie verte, où en fait on propose des standards qui font qu'à travers les différents partenaires dans la chaîne de distribution, ou entre un régulateur et les fabricants qui ont les données, on va réussir à parler le même langage. En fonction des données qu'on veut échanger, on a un standard différent. Donc, on aura GDSN pour Master Data, on aura EDI pour les données relatives à les transactions, et pour la partie la plus aboutie ou la plus mature et l'échange de données relatives à des événements de traçabilité, on aura EPCIS. On reviendra au fur et à mesure sur tous ces acronymes et sur tous ces différents standards, mais vraiment de manière schématique, l'idée de ces 3 piliers, identification, capture et partage des informations et la structure des standards GS1. On passe à la diapo suivante. Je suis désolée, il y a à nouveau ces petites animations. Voilà. Je vais aller plus vite pour la prochaine partie, mais ici, l'idée est vraiment de visualiser. Et si vous avez les slides, vous aurez aussi les liens. L'intégralité de la chaîne d'approvisionnement et en cliquant sur chaque partie, voir quel standard GS1 peut aider à ce qu'un process soit mis en place de manière harmonisée au niveau international. On passe à la diapo suivante. Un nouveau standard qui vient d'être développé et qui est de plus en plus utilisé par les régulateurs, par les fabricants, est le standard Digital Link. Je ne vais pas essayer de le traduire en français parce que ça doit être assez terrible, mais l'idée est qu'en utilisant le code barre qui est sur le produit et en utilisant l'identifiant unique GTIN qui est encodé dans ce code barre, en le scannant avec un téléphone portable, on peut avoir accès à une information en ligne sur un produit, dans ce cas-là, un produit de santé. Donc, on peut penser, et c'est l'exemple qui est le plus souvent proposé, à ces énormes leaflets ou ces énormes brochures ou notices d'utilisation qu'on trouve à l'intérieur des paquets de médicaments, qui est écrite trop petite, qui est impossible à replier et que personne ne lit. Dans le futur, on pourrait, en scannant le code barre, avoir accès à toutes ces informations en ligne. On passe à la diapo suivante. Vous avez maintenant fait le tour d'horizon rapide des standards GS1, les 3 piliers et puis le Digital Link qui est le petit dernier. Où est-ce qu'ils sont mis en œuvre? Ils sont mis en œuvre à peu près partout. Et quand je dis à peu près, vous voyez que l'Afrique est grise plus que verte et c'est pour ça qu'on est là aujourd'hui. J'espère que dans 10 ans, quand je présenterai ce slide, l'Afrique sera verte. L'Italie sera forcément verte, puisque aujourd'hui elle est orange, mais à partir de 2025, normalement, ils doivent passer et s'harmoniser avec le reste de l'Union européenne et donc utiliser les standards GS1 aussi. Ça, c'est notre challenge. Comment faire pour qu'ils deviennent une réalité? On passe à la diapo suivante. Avant le Covid, nous avions l'habitude de nous retrouver de manière régulière dans différents pays à travers le monde. Et l'idée était de partager les bonnes pratiques et de vraiment ouvrir une feuille de route, avoir un phare vers lequel on puisse tous se diriger. Et la dernière fois qu'on s'est rencontrés, c'était au Nigeria pour certains d'entre vous, et un call to action a été signé. Il a été signé par 25 régulateurs de pays qui sont aussi sur ce forum aujourd'hui et par des donneurs. Et l'idée est vraiment de continuer, de ne pas mettre ce call to action aux oubliettes, mais de le mettre en œuvre maintenant. Donc, on a tous dit qu'il était important de collaborer, qu'on reconnaissait le besoin de faire quelque chose pour lutter contre la contrefaçon des médicaments. On vous présente les outils pendant 3 jours et ensuite, à vous de continuer avec notre soutien. On passe à la diapo suivante. Un des outils qui est le plus précieux est développé par GS1, mais USAID a aussi une version pour les appels d'offres. On passe à la diapo suivante. C'est notre feuille de route pour la traçabilité des médicaments. C'est une feuille de route toute simple, mais qui est pratique parce qu'elle est détaillée. Et on vous propose une feuille de route en plusieurs étapes. Vous avez les différentes étapes ici. La première, c'est de définir son marché, de comprendre à quoi on s'attaque, de savoir quelles sont les choses qui sont déjà mises en place dans notre pays et qu'on peut utiliser pour construire dessus avec des fondations solides. La deuxième, ça sera de choisir le système de traçabilité qui correspond, en gardant à l'esprit les besoins de son pays et les capacités de son pays. Et vous verrez qu'en fait, il n'y a pas un système de traçabilité, il y en a plein. Définir le champ d'application, parce que c'est très important, on fait des petits pas. Quand on met en place un système de traçabilité, on ne peut pas faire une révolution. Et chaque petit pas amène des succès qui petit à petit alimentent le pas suivant et au fur et à mesure, on arrive à avoir quelque chose de complètement déployé. Quand je dis des petits pas, je dis aussi petit à petit, c'est-à-dire qu'il faut une mise en œuvre graduelle et réaliste. Il faut collaborer, et c'est pour ça qu'on est là. Et enfin, il faut comprendre comment utiliser les standards GS1 à bon escient. Et pour ça, vous avez nos collègues dans les régions et Nouran avec vous en Afrique. On passe à la diapo suivante. Ah, toujours ces animations, je suis désolée. J'ai parlé des systèmes de traçabilité, j'ai dit qu'il y en avait beaucoup. La traçabilité en tant que telle est définie avec différents blocs qui, moi j'aime bien comparer ça avec un jeu de Lego, c'est-à-dire qu'on prend ces différents blocs de couleurs et Nouran, tu peux déjà cliquer sur tous les, au moins 4 fois. Voilà. Donc ces différents blocs et à la fin, on a notre maison en Lego. Le premier bloc est l'identification unique des médicaments, des produits, des lieux, des acteurs. La deuxième bloc, c'est la capture de ces informations dans des codes barres. Ensuite, le lien. Il faut que le produit soit marié à des données pour qu'on puisse avoir quelque chose qui est relatif à la traçabilité. Et enfin, l'échange de ces données tout au long de la chaîne d'approvisionnement et avec les autorités réglementaires. On passe à la diapo suivante. Un exemple. J'ai dit que petit à petit et avec du temps, on arrivait à définir un système de traçabilité au niveau national qui est complètement intégré avec le reste du système de santé. La Turquie a commencé il y a plus de 10 ans et aujourd'hui, leur système de traçabilité est complètement intégré à tout le reste pour le système de santé, mais le système de remboursement, etc. On a vu que pendant le Covid, ce système-là fonctionne. Ils ont pu le rendre assez flexible pour récupérer aussi, pour l'utiliser aussi pour les vaccins pour le Covid, pour d'autres produits qui ont été relatifs à la sécurité des patients pendant la pandémie. Et vous voyez ici que sur tous les plans, que ce soit la réactivité du système, que ce soit le retour sur investissement, et surtout pour la sécurité des patients, ça fonctionne. On passe à la diapo suivante. C'est juste avec des mots ce que je viens de dire. Et encore une fois, vous aurez les slides. L'idée aussi de GS1 est de vous permettre justement de regarder qu'est-ce qui a été fait dans le reste du monde, éventuellement de vous mettre en contact avec les régulateurs des autres pays, si besoin, pour apprendre. Et on passe à la diapo suivante encore une fois. Les activités en cours avec les donneurs. Je vais essayer d'accélérer parce que je sais que je suis en retard par rapport au temps qui m'était imparti. L'histoire de GS1 avec l'Afrique et avec les donneurs a commencé il y a longtemps, avec un groupe que GS1 a facilité sur l'identification des emballages des vaccins. Et vous voyez ici le premier projet qui a été lancé avec la Tanzanie, le Nicaragua et la Gambie. Et vous avez aussi le lien vers le document où en fait l'idée est de continuer sur ce que Gavi et UNICEF ont proposé récemment, c'est-à-dire identifier les vaccins avec des standards GS1. De la même manière que ce que vous avez vu tout à l'heure sur le slide avec un data matrix et les 4 éléments. On continue. C'est aussi ce que l'on retrouve dans beaucoup d'appels d'offres par les donneurs. Et Nouran, je propose que tu avances, comme ça on peut gagner du temps parce que tout ça, ce sont des liens que vous aurez après quand vous aurez les diapos. Et vous pouvez regarder, donc le Fonds mondial est aussi un des partenaires. Et vous trouvez ici toutes les informations sur nos standards et sur la collaboration. Et encore une fois, l'idée est vraiment d'améliorer la sécurité des patients. Voilà pour cette vision d'ensemble des standards GS1. Si vous avez des questions, je n'ai pas eu le temps de regarder le chat, mais j'y répondrai au fur et à mesure. Et plus on va avancer dans la conférence, plus tout cela va devenir concret et vous verrez des applications aussi à travers les pays.
And thank you, Geraldine, for making this to happen, especially for the Francophone sisters and brothers. I'm the DG NAVDAC, and I joined the agency in 2017, November, and the goal was to strengthen the regulatory system. And one of the ways or two of the ways we did that, or we are doing that, is establishing quality management system, and also the global benchmarking, ISO 9004. And that those attempts have led to us getting the certification for ISO 9001, and as of March of this year, getting ISO 9004, which is the global benchmarking. But in between all this, as I'm going to talk shortly or show shortly in my slides, we embarked on traceability. And this is just to make sure that our mandate, which is to regulate, control, and the manufacture, importation, exportation, distribution, emphasized, advertisement, sale, and use of 7 regulated products are done using international standards. That is our mandate. The burden is placed on distribution, sale, and use, and that is where traceability comes in. We developed the traceability strategy. It's a national strategy that was in 2019. Next, please. And to do that, we established first the governance structure of the traceability, being a national strategy that was launched by the Minister of Health. And then we continue to strengthen our own regulatory environment in order to make sure that we create supply chain efficiency, and also build and sustain technology which are actually ongoing, and enable the use of the GS1 standards. Next, please. We were fortunate to have the second GS1 Healthcare Conference in Lagos. That was 2019, but this started in 2018 during the first African Healthcare Conference, GS1 conference, where Mr. Woods interacted with one of my staff that I sent to the conference, and Mr. Wood suggested or asked if Nigeria could be this, could host the second meeting. And it was a very successful meeting where 25 African countries came or attended the meeting. And we also had a call to action. All of us signed that the call to action. It was a very surreal and memorable time. You can see Geraldine in front, and all the other GS1 staff, and of course, Mr. Wood right on top. Next, please. Nigeria traceability, like I mentioned, started with the governance, and we have the Federal Ministry of Health co-chairing with us, NAFDAC, and we have every other month meeting with stakeholders. It's a multi-stakeholder strategy from across public and private sectors, providing oversight for implementation. We created a traceability office at NAFDAC to drive the implementation of Nigerian traceability strategy. It is very important for countries that want to embark on, or regulatory agencies that want to embark on this, to start with governance. It makes it easier if there's a buy-in within the country. And then we have the traceability technical working group. These are 4 or 5 of our staff that are very good with computers. Next, please. So we use this opportunity, the exposure that we got and the support that we got with GS1 in particular. We have GS1 office in Nigeria, and Tunde Odulami had been very helpful because he led, or is leading, the training of our staff in terms of the technicality. And Nigeria is one of the 2 countries, I believe, in the world Nigeria and Indonesia, that use traceability to monitor COVID-19 vaccines. So we are using full traceability, not verification only. And how did we set this up? We made sure that there is only one port of entry for our vaccines. That is in the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja. From there, we move the vaccine, or the vaccines are moved to the warehouse, the cold store, the National Strategic Cold Store, where the vaccines are commissioned. And once they are commissioned or scanned, they are distributed by primary health. This is a collaborative effort between NAFDAC and primary health. Primary health is the agency. Primary health is the agency in charge of immunization in Nigeria. There's a solid collaboration between the two agencies, and that has worked for us. So primary health then sends these vaccines to state warehouses, the local governments, and then to healthcare facilities. And we follow the vaccines to the state, to the local government, to the healthcare facilities, scanning them to ensure that what we commissioned in Abuja is what they are getting in the healthcare facilities, therefore making sure that there is no intrusion, there is no substandard falsified vaccines in the supply chain. Next, please. So using the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines, we were very successful, relatively successful being the first time. You can see from the color code that we were able to scan the vaccines or monitor the vaccines through most of our states. We have 36 states in Nigeria. You can see the deep green, we have greater than 1,000 scans. All these healthcare facilities were allocated global location numbers. The scanning that was done at the cold store was scanning of the secondary package. We couldn't do the primary package because the manufacturing would not allow for that. So it is the secondary packaging, and where the healthcare facility is big enough, we actually track and trace the vaccines to the healthcare facility. If the healthcare facility is too small, at the local government, we break it with the secondary box, the secondary packaging box is broken. At that point, we stop at the local government. But we've been very successful. The next place. Yes, we've been very, very successful in terms of track and tracing of COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, what we were able to do, there was a batch of vaccine that we found out had, one of the batches has sterility problem. And as soon as we saw that in the lab, because we also did lot release for all the vaccines that came to Nigeria. We did lot release for all the vaccines, and we saw turbidity on the 13th day. It's a 14-day study test. On the 13th day, very tiny, very, very faint turbidity, which shows microbial growth. We immediately stopped the distribution. It hasn't been distributed, that particular batch. And we knew from traceability which states the vaccines are, which local governments. We withdrew them within a day or two. So that is the beauty of traceability. It's not just only comitology, we also did in country. Wow. There is some noise at the back. Okay. We also did in-country serialization of COVID-19 vaccines, and Nigeria is the first country to do in-country serialization for vaccines that did not come with barcoding. We did that for Moderna. There was no human readable expiry date on the secondary pack. Therefore, we had to do in-country serialization. We also did that for Pfizer-BioNTech, 5 batches. Similarly, the GS1 2D data matrix barcode on the secondary parts did not include serial numbers. So you can see the top figure the top figure to the left is the unserialized packaging, and the bottom is the serialized packaging, and you can see the difference in the middle panel. So we have been able to do in-country serialization of COVID-19 vaccines. Next, please. We also are mentoring other agencies. We welcomed the FDA Ghana in November last year to understudy us. This is my team, and including the FDA Ghana team. I think four of them joined us to understudy us, and it was good to know that within 2 months of coming to Nigeria, Ghana has launched their traceability program, starting with the governance. So that should be encouraging to our sister agencies, that this reliance that WHO global benchmarking has taught us, we should put it into practice a lot. Next, please. In terms of stakeholders engagement and collaboration, NAFDAC has organized meetings with solution providers and stakeholders for both public and private sector pilots. We have now guidelines for master data that is published on our website, and we have the traceability regulation that we have developed. It's the 0 draft is under review as we speak. So many other things are going on aside from the commissioning and the in-country serialization. We are receiving a lot of support from partners for traceability hardware and pilots in COVID-19, and also in antiviral tuberculosis, malaria drugs supply chains. Next, please. Anita mentioned that traceability is costly to implement, but it is worth it. Yes, it is very, very worth it. We needed, at the beginning, we needed a lot of procurement of hardware, which is the scanners, to support pilot implementation. We got support now. So we are doing, as we speak, training on the ATM supply chain, and also the sensitization workshops, like I mentioned, is ongoing for the antiviral tuberculosis, malaria supply chain monitoring. We have statewide training in 36 states plus FCT in this particular effort that we are going to, actually we are starting that in about 2 weeks. So like I mentioned, public sector pilots, we're going to do that through Global Fund, and the private sector pilot, we are already working on that also. Next, please. So in terms of our journey, I mentioned June 2019 workshop to develop national traceability strategy. We launched the strategy October 2020. The Honorable Minister did that. And then in March 2021, we have the COVID-19 vaccine traceability pilots in country serialization. I've mentioned that. And also NAFDAC became part of the Global Steering Committee and tax teams. Reliance, I mentioned that, that we've welcomed Ghana. We have also interacted a lot with SAPRA in South Africa in order to, mentor them or guide them in terms of launching their own program. I was going to the top panel. Let me just go back, June 2019. Then in September 2019, we had a call to action. I mentioned that already. November 2020, we had a signing of a memorandum of understanding with GS1. That really went a long way for us. And then fourth quarter of 2021, I mentioned we started getting international support. But the good thing about this is that we started on our own. We wanted to make sure that this will be sustainable. We started on our own for the first 2 years, and that also encouraged international partners to come in, knowing that there is the political or regulatory will to do traceability. And then first quarter of 2022, we have the Global Fund monitoring, which I mentioned already, using the ATM products, and the engagements of private sector supply chain is what we are doing. We are doing right now. Actually, we started the first quarter of 2022, and then March of 2022, like I mentioned, we are using Reliance in terms of monitoring, or not monitoring, mentoring. Our sister agency, SAPRA, is an example. And the story continues. Next, please. And with that, I want to say thank you very much. The story continues in terms of reliance. We need to rely on each other. It is easier to learn from another agency because they will not allow you to make mistakes that they make. And things will become a little faster in terms of getting from point A to point B. So I want to thank GS1 again for this laudable effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DG. Appreciate that sharing. And I hope the session was interesting for you. You know, I think earlier somebody said that it's a marathon, it takes time, but then hopefully from DG's presentation, you were able to appreciate that it actually can be done. So I see only one question in the chat regarding scanners. Is there anybody that perhaps maybe would like to ask specific questions to DG? I know DG has to go in about 2 minutes, that's why I'm trying to catch her now. So if anybody has any specific questions, and you can ask your question also in French.
Any question?
So if you want to speak, raise your hand, then we can unmute you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have to go back to my meeting. I'm sorry, but if there is any question, I can answer through the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DG, for that. Yeah, so as DG mentioned, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and she will take them. I don't see any additional questions for Anita from WHO. So we have a few minutes of time right now. So if anybody would like to ask any specific questions, please raise your hand, then you can unmute yourself and speak. Abraham, I see you have your hand raised. Let's see how we can get you to speak. Abraham, ask to unmute. Okay. Abraham, if you can unmute yourself. Abraham, si vous avez des questions? Alors, pas de questions d'Abraham, mais on a peut-être de... Oh, okay, I'll just speak back to English so it's easy for the translators. Togo, you have a question, and the question from Togo will be in French, I believe. So please, Anita, if you want to translate, if you want to switch to the English channel, or stay in French as well, because I think you speak a bit of French. So Togo, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question. The question from Togo will be in French, so please switch to the English channel if you're English speaking. Togo? We cannot hear you, Togo?
Yeah, merci.
Voilà, ok, super.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde.
Bonjour.
Ma question s'adresse au professeur Adé. Dans la présentation, j'ai cru comprendre qu'il y a des vaccins de Moderna qui sont arrivés au Nigeria, qui n'avaient ni de numéro de série, ni de date de péremption, et qu'on a stérilisé et à qui on a attribué des codes barres pour être utilisés. Donc ma question, c'est de savoir quelle est la garantie de la sécurité et de l'efficacité de ces produits qu'on a stérilisés, et quelle est la méthode de stérilisation qu'on a utilisée pour ces vaccins? Merci.
Okay, thank you. That was a question for DG Moji, but she has stepped out. We'll just note that. Thank you, Togo, for that question. DRC, I see you have a question. You have raised your hand. Please unmute yourself and let's see if we can hear you this time. Sorry, we the connection is not very good, but we can you please continue, try and ask a question. Let's see if we can hear you.
Alors, nous avons une question et notre question s'adresse directement au professeur Mouchi de NAFTA. Nous considérons que, en tenant compte de la présentation qui vient d'être faite, le Nigeria est actuellement en train de mettre en œuvre des GS1. Notre volonté, c'est de savoir est-ce que cette mise en œuvre concerne tous les médicaments qui circulent au Nigeria ou tout simplement les vaccins et les produits de lutte contre le VIH ou le VIH.
Okay, thank you for your question. I believe that was also another question for DG Moji regarding the setting up of the traceability system, whether it concerns only vaccines or all medications. So I'll also park that. Any questions for Joe?
I was just going to say, maybe on the question about the current status for Nigeria, I hope that Professor Moji doesn't mind for me maybe to speak on her behalf, but it's my understanding that they are starting with vaccines, and they're starting more specifically with COVID-19 vaccines, and they are learning. It's a pilot in a way. They're learning from their experiences, and I think the intention is to expand to other products and maybe medicines and other sorts of vaccines. It's also my understanding that it is across the whole of Nigeria. So they were able to cover the whole country to be able to do traceability for COVID-19 vaccines. So, but Professor Moji has more information, but hopefully that gave a little bit of an answer to the question.
Spot on, Anita. Thank you for responding, for sharing that response. In fact, I think I definitely agree with you. I don't see emojis on the call. So I also have the understanding that the products for that are in the scope of Nigeria's traceability system is everything. Obviously, as they get clear with their implementation plan, they will perhaps maybe phase the products, but they're starting with definitely COVID-19 vaccines. And I think I understand from Moji's presentation and also from the implementations going on in Nigeria that the COVID-19 vaccines traceability pilot is also to give the country some time to understand the process, the nuances, basically the LOE to set up such a traceability system, and that is helping them to inform other important pieces. As you noticed, Moji talked, they have recently published the master data guideline, which I shared with you in the chat, but they are also in the process of working on the policy, which then will hopefully cater for all products. I've seen a similar question as well from Suleiman Bengu. Also, I think that was a similar question. So I believe that has been answered. Alors, oh, sorry. So there is a question for Anita in the chat.
It's about the minimum information that should be included in the barcode. Yeah, and it's a difficult question, and I think it is still to be decided. And I think it's important to decide it because maybe at a global level, certainly for vaccines, we already have a position paper on what should be included. for traceability purposes. And it is, I have to go and find the actual information and I'll put it in the chat. But I think for medicines and it's a bit less clear, and it depends a bit from country to country. So the problem is that different countries that are creating an agenda on traceability and are implementing their own regulations. So certainly in the EU and also in the United States, they're starting to implement legislation and regulations for traceability, but sometimes the requirements of what do you need to have in the barcode are different. And this makes it very difficult for manufacturers. You heard Dr. Moji say that some of the companies had not actually serialized all of the products and that they had to do it in the country. So this is where we're saying to have discussions between countries is very important for traceability. For devices, we certainly do have a minimum set of unique device identification that was set down by the International Medical Device Regulators Forum. So I know very well we have it for devices, but it's my understanding that for medicines and vaccines, there's not one global standard just yet, but we already started with at least COVID-19 vaccines, and we're hoping that we can add the others later. But I will find the piece in the traceability paper that might have some more information there.
Thank you, Anita. And perhaps maybe I think Geraldine also touched briefly on this topic earlier when she was speaking. So Geraldine, please go ahead and perhaps maybe share a bit more on that. Thank you.
Yes, so I will continue in English so it's easier for translation. As you may have seen, the question is related to what is encoded in the barcode, not what is shared in a database. And on that point, it's slightly different. So what is encoded in the barcode for pharma is very straightforward. We do have a global framework, which is defined by different regulations across the world. And it's also what you find in the WHO policy paper. It's usually 4 data elements that you see commonly required in the barcode. This is a product code, a globally unique product code. This is an expiry date. It is the lot number. You can stop there, but if you really want to have traceability at the level of the packaging or for the vaccines at the level of the vial, you need to also use the serial number. So these are the 4 elements which are globally recommended to be encoded in the barcode. And as Anita said, in regards to data which are shared as master data with the regulator, this is not defined as it is for medical device, for example, for pharmaceuticals at the global level, and it really much depends on what regulators feel is important to them in order to be able to build up a traceability system. So just a piece of clarification on what is on the product, in the barcode, and in a database and provided to the regulators. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geraldine and Anita, for clarifying on that. So I see we have a hand raised as well. So maybe just in terms of housekeeping. So we have our next presentation starts at 15 after the top of the hour. We have Anita here, she'll leave. So perhaps maybe for those of you, we can just stay on the line for a little bit longer that have questions. Anita, if you don't mind, then we'll let you go after the break. Thank you. So I see Ali Meguizani, you have raised your hand. So please unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Ali Meguizani. Ali, vous avez des questions? Si vous pouvez le poser.
Excusez-moi, c'est une erreur.
Ah. Donc, votre micro est coupé maintenant. Sorry, your microphone is muted right now, Ali. So please unmute and start talking again.
Oui, excusez-moi, c'est une erreur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, vas-y alors. You went again on mute, Ali. Please unmute. No question from Ali. Okay, okay, Ali, I think you're still trying to ask a question. Oh, it was a mistake. Okay, good. Okay. No more questions then. I think we took the question already from DRC. Great. Okay, so that's all. Then thank you very much, Anita, Geraldine, and Moji. She's not on the call. That's the finalization of the first session. We'll take a quick 15-minute break, and then we will continue with other speakers. But of course, you have Anita's contact details, as well as DG Moji as well. So feel free to reach out to them, or you can leave us questions, and then we'll be happy to forward the questions to them and put you in touch. But otherwise, thank you so much to our speakers, and see you all in 15 minutes. Thank you. All right, bye-bye. Okay, DRC has a question. Please go ahead. Our speakers are not here, but perhaps maybe we can just take the question. Please go ahead.
Je peux poser la question? Bien, merci. Jean du RDC. OK, si j'ai bien compris, la structure de traçabilité des produits est indépendante pour faire face aux injonctions politiques et économiques et pour les pays à faible réglementation. Je voudrais avoir un commentaire là-dessus. Parce que vous venez de dire que la présentante, on a dit au Ghana, ils ont mis en place le système après 2 mois. C'est ainsi que je pose la question. Pour le pays à faible réglementation, comme les nôtres, et où il y a un grand volume de médicaments. C'est-à-dire que la structure, vraiment, elle est indépendante. Voilà.
Okay, so the question, okay. You have just joined. See, you have joined also for Audio DG. Thank you for joining us back. There's been quite a lot of questions for you, but we've tried to take some of them. Our recent question is just from DRC, and the question is regarding, I don't know if you were to listen to the translation, but the question that is being asked from DRC is regarding Ghana. I think perhaps maybe it was a point of You mentioned that Ghana were able to come to Nigeria, to NAFDAC, to understand their process, but then they went back and they were able to implement traceability in 2 weeks. So can you please clarify on that one? So that's just the translation of the question that was just asked from DRC. DG? I don't know if you're still there, you can hear us? No, I don't think DG can hear us. So perhaps I can take this. Just to clarify. In fact, it didn't take. Ghana still has not yet put in place their traceability system. Rather, what DG was mentioning is that they were able to to start the process more comprehensively. So as I understand, Ghana has already developed their strategy for setting up pharmaceutical traceability in their country. And this process was obviously started before they went to NAFDAC, but I think what DG was meaning, or at least had meant to communicate, is that going to Nigeria, going to NAFDAC and being able to respond to some of the questions kind of gave them a little bit more encouragement to actually come back and that vavavoom to really get going with implementation. So no, Ghana does not yet have the traceability system. They do not have the policy in place yet, but they have started the conversation. They have engaged the stakeholder group. They have, in fact, a very big stakeholder group that is involved in the conversations. And they have their strategy, which I understand is now at the Ministry of Health, Minister for Health's desk. So Ghana is still on track to implement their traceability system, but received a lot of inspiration and encouragement from DG Moji and the team at NAFDAC in Nigeria. I hope that that is clear. Any other questions? Any other points? Okay, I don't see any more questions, but we're still here. So if anybody wants to ask or share anything else, please use this platform. this break time. We're break time. We have our break right now, but nonetheless, we're still here. So happy to continue taking any more questions. Our next speaker will be joining in 15 after the top of the hour. It's 5 p.m. in Nairobi, Kenya, so that will be at 5:15. I don't know what time it is over there for you. We have Alfred Edwin from Malawi. You want to raise a question, so I allow you to speak. Please unmute yourself, Alfred.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is, can, for example, private sector lead GS1 system in a country where the government is not very active? The question is, can the private sector, for example, private companies, actually lead the process for GS1 development and implementation in the country? Thank you.
Sorry, Alfred, I missed your question. You were talking about the private sector, but I didn't get the whole question. Can you please rephrase it?
Okay, thank you. I was saying, for example, if a country government departments are not active with regard to development of GS1 systems, can the private sector, for example, lead the process? Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. I would like to invite my colleague Geraldine to talk a little bit about that, because I understand a similar model has been used in, has been set up in EU. So Geraldine, if you're still here, if you can talk a little bit.
I am here, but yes, okay. So the question is related.
Yes, to the private sector. So we have a question regarding the private sector. If the government has not set up, if the government is not making the effort or doing the work to set up this pharmaceutical traceability, can the private sector do this?
Yes and no, actually. So in Europe, what we have is a regulatory framework which is saying, this is what you have to do and how to do it. And in particular, in regards to the exchange of data, is going to be further designed and established with the stakeholders. And so we had the trade association for the pharmaceutical manufacturers, for the generic manufacturers, for the distributors, coming together into an organization mandated by the Commission to develop and establish the system to exchange information related to product for Europe. So it's not only the private sector, and it's within a regulatory framework, and it's only for one part of the traceability system. If you remember the different block, that is only the block related to the data exchange. For the rest, private sector is involved because they have to implement, so to apply the barcode, etc., but they do that according to the requirements which are defined by the regulators. I hope this is answering the question.
Thank you, Geraldine. Alfred, does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-up question for that?
Yeah, I think that's okay. That's good. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Geraldine, for taking that question.
It's a pleasure.
Anybody else with a question? I know we're supposed to be on break time, but some of us are still here. So you can definitely take advantage of this opportunity and ask questions. Okay, Suleiman Bengu, you have a question?
Okay. Do you hear me?
There's a lot of echo. There's a lot of echo over there.
Hello?
There's a lot of echo, Suleiman. We can
yes,
hear you.
There is an echo. Is it okay now?
No.
There's still an echo.
Yeah, it sounds that you have two audios in the room. Can you turn off one? If you can disconnect from one, then that would be really helpful.
Maybe it's another laptop. Let me ask to the technician here. Yeah, Nico.
Perhaps you can put also your question in the chat.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Yes, Suleiman, yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention. I just wanted to ask something regarding the experience of Nigeria. They went step by step. They started with the vaccine. So it's much easier when you start with one product. Yeah, it was identified as vaccine. Now, my question is, how are we going to do when it comes to medicine? Means the medicine that our populations use every day. And we know that it is not only one entry. It is not only one entry. It is by air, sea, and yeah, 3 ways of getting supplies in our different countries. Now, if you want to implement a system of traceability, how are we going to do with that? Because it will be a big task. Because the supply we get, especially for the, I'm not talking for the public market, I'm talking especially for the private market, which is 90% of the supplies in our countries. Mainly, I'm talking about Western African countries, and I think it's the same thing for other countries as well. So my question is, how are we going to do if we want to have this traceability with the medicine that we use, our populations use every day? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that question, Suleiman. So DG, I don't know if you're there, DG Moji. Okay, DG is not here. So I'll take a first shot at answering to this question, and Geraldine, I'm virtually looking at you as well for help. So the question is, I think based on the sharing from Nigeria, that they have started, based on the sharing from Nigeria, they have started with vaccines traceability, and it's just one product. And I think the question that Suleiman has is to be able to understand how it's possible to scale this up to additional products that are infrequently used. So Suleiman, I hope this was the question. If not, please feel free to clarify. So from my perspective, what DG Modi shared of what is happening in Nigeria is just an example of the best practice, right? So you want to understand as a country, you want to understand the level of effort that is taken, that is required in setting up pharmaceutical traceability. And that is what DG NAFDAC has done. They use the vaccines as an opportunity to understand, to set up the necessary process to understand what exactly is required to set up traceability. And if you recall from DG's presentation, what came up clearly is the fact that products needed to be systematically marked and identified, and that this information was available centrally, right? So the vaccines needed to have the GTIN, the global trade item number, alongside other information, and this information needed to appear in a data matrix. And also, most importantly, this needed to be systematically available for all the vaccines that they were conducting in the pilot. So that's one step of standardization. Additionally, she also shared, DG Moji also shared that as the product went along the supply chain, the process in retrieving this information, in accessing this information, in using this information was also very systematically throughout the process. And so one of the things that I would recommend, or I think that was very evident also from where Nigeria is the importance of having this standardization. And that's why Didi specifically mentioned working on their policy. So they're currently working to set up a policy so that all the products coming into their country are systematically identified, and that information is systematically captured in barcode, so that as the product is moving along the supply chain, all this information is retrieved. But more importantly, DG talked about the various stakeholders that were involved. If you recall from her earlier slides, there were many stakeholders that were involved, and they all understood what they needed to do and what they needed to do as in their relation, in their part to execute their role within the supply chain. And that's why I think that brings another important aspect of really having together the stakeholders at the local level to be aligned, to understand the assignment, basically to understand what needs to be done, to understand what objective the government is trying to do. And that's why stakeholder engagement and systematically engaging the stakeholder and uniformly engaging the stakeholder is an important message. And this applies both for private and the public sector, because I'm seeing a follow-up on the chat. So what I'm talking about applies for both the private and the public sector products, because whether it's for the public or the private sector, I believe the regulatory authority in that country needs to approve those products. They have control. And that's why a lot of this work needs to be conducted within this regulatory authority, within the Ministry of Health, which which is cutting across all products. So that's my brief take on in responding to this question. Geraldine, if you can just take 1 minute also to add to that, if you would like to add. Also looking at the time, I think we are a bit behind. So please go ahead, Geraldine. Thank you.
Thank you, Noran. There is not so much to add. As you said, the idea is really to extend and to start small. And what we see as a good practice is to run pilots. And so it's not called a pilot for Nigeria because it was real and the COVID vaccines were needed urgently, but this could be seen as a pilot. So you start to experiment your traceability system on a small range of products, and sometimes also in a limited amount of time. So you can then stop, step back, assess what worked well, what should be changed, and adjust potentially your system. So that's just a thought on adding to what Noran said. Having this possibility to try with a pilot or anything else is a good practice.
Thank you very much. So there's one more question for Geraldine. I know we're like 2 minutes behind time, but I think this is an important question that we should take. So just briefly as well, Geraldine, is in the Q&A. What would be the impact on suppliers, procurement, and availability if we advocate inclusion of regulatory and tender requirements in countries where there are limited and weak suppliers, manufacturers? Is there in-country practical experience challenges on this one? So I think we've gotten this question.
That's a super good question. What we see in regulation across the world is that sometimes you have two streams. One is targeting manufacturers who are importing products into a country. And very often those manufacturers are used to implement GS1 standard for other countries because they are not only importing in one country, but they are big importers of medicines across the world. And because you have so many requirements, it's more than 70 countries today requiring the use of GS1 and a lot of donor organizations as well. They are used to do it. So for them, it's just adding one packaging line for one country, and it works. And as you said, it's often seen as an extra burden for manufacturers who don't have the same capabilities in the country itself, who is starting to require traceability for medicines. And so that's why you very often have other measures to make it easier. For example, you can have either an extended deadline, so they have more time to get ready. You can allow them to use stickers instead of having to implement directly online printing for the barcode and the information which is in human readable format. So you have different possibility to adjust and to make sure that it's not really seen only as a burden. And that's something that we see in quite a lot of regulation, where you have different streams, one for imported drugs and another one for the locally manufactured.
Thank you very much, Geraldine, for taking that question, and thank you also for the person who asked this question. So I think we take a pause on questions. It seems like I think the more that you're getting time to think about this, the more the questions are coming up. So we'll pause this question. If they come up to you, just don't hesitate, put them in the chat, and then we'll get to them later. So for now, I'd like to invite our next speaker, Tom Woods. If you can turn on your video, please. And there you are, we see you. Kimara, if you can please go ahead to the next slide so that Tom can briefly, Tom, of course, you don't need a slide to introduce yourself, but please briefly introduce yourself and go ahead with the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, friends and colleagues, both here in Washington, and good afternoon to my friends in Africa. It's nice to be with you all again and to talk about the health product traceability. I see from the conversation I've just heard, you've really gotten into the details already. So some of my comments, if they're too macro level, we can certainly dive into the details. My name is Tom Woods, as you can see, and I'm sure many of you know that I've been working on these medicine safety and quality issues over the years. I chair a coordination platform that we call the Global Steering Committee for Quality Assurance, and that's hosted by the World Bank. And maybe some of you joined us during our recent Global Steering Committee Africa Traceability meeting, which was chaired by Prof. Adeyeye of NAFDAC, as you know. Well, it's good to be back together and to really be kicking off this process of rebuilding our momentum around traceability. That's how I see it. We're rebuilding momentum. We had to make sure that all of our French-speaking friends could be with us. We can't move forward as a region, Africa, without you. So next slide, please. Let's get into it. Today, I'm speaking about donor agencies and coordination. Okay, this slide is very busy, you can see. But let me try to break it down here for a few minutes. The Global Steering Committee members, the original members, were all the big donor agencies. And these were the ones that procure health products, health commodities, medicines for distribution in many countries around the world. And you know these institutions. They're there in the middle. We have USAID and Global Fund and UNICEF and Gavi, World Bank, even the Gates Foundation helps. And they want supply chains that work. We know that. They want to co-invest in working supply chains because they use a lot of their resources, taxpayer-funded resources, to make sure that health products reach people across Africa and in your country. So these guys in the middle are the GSC members, and we use those meetings to help coordinate our efforts, making sure we're not duplicating, doing the same thing in the same country. So that gives us a platform to discuss and to help us coordinate our technical approaches as well, and to think about new technology like traceability and applications that will help improve the supply chain integrity. Now on the left, importantly, and this gets to the last question, one of the last questions we had was the role of the private sector. So we set up a private sector advisory council. And that's in large part because we know that the private sector is a really critical partner. They may not be making the decisions or driving the issue of traceability, but they better be involved because often they have ideas and they have technology. And all that is used by the partners to tap into and help improve this process. And there at the bottom, you can see the national authorities and supply chain stakeholders. It's been discussed. I'm sure that Prof mentioned it in her remarks. That's really the key. That is the key. And that's many of you gathered here today. So whether you're a medicines regulatory authority, or maybe you're from the Ministry of Health, or even from a customs authority or a special sort of interagency coordination unit. That the national authorities, that is government, well, you have to be taking the lead or none of this is going to work right. Okay, so national authorities, they're in the middle, at the bottom, central. It's really what we do. It's why this group exists. Next slide, please. Now, we've all been through a lot over the last few years, this pandemic, and it had some direct impacts on us. It had indirect impact on our work. But one thing I learned is that protecting our health products through the supply chain is absolutely critical. It's life-saving. That's the big lesson. Now, some of you might even be in this photo. This only goes back a couple of years. Do you remember? We gathered in Lagos, Nigeria, and we all pledged our support to build traceability across Africa. Well, I haven't forgotten the pledge. I don't think we've forgotten the pledge. In fact, with the launch of the Global Steering Committee Africa Traceability Group, we're rededicating ourselves to using global standards, GS1 global standards, to improve the visibility and the integrity of our supply chains. And as I was saying, African leaders are going to make it happen. It requires African leadership. The donors are with you. There's no doubt about it. Those donor agencies that I listed earlier, we're with you and we're going to help. But at the end of the day, the focus has to be on national ownership, national leadership. We're not going to drive this effort from, say, Washington, D.C., where I am today, or from Geneva, Switzerland, or from Brussels. It has to be done in your country with national leadership. And the good news is that already African medicine regulatory authorities are working together to learn from each other. And I'm sure you've heard the great news that Nigeria is open to receiving visitors, to exchanging with you on what they've learned in their initial steps. I really would encourage that sort of peer-to-peer learning. And the donors may be able to find ways to help you do that more efficiently. So next slide, please. Now, when the pandemic started over 2 years ago, it was clear that illicit and unapproved health products were going to become more of a problem more than ever, right? In particular, the COVID vaccines, which we were just talking about, needed enhanced supply chain integrity so that everyone could feel confident as these vaccines came into the country. Now, of course, most countries, especially in Africa, didn't have a track and trace system in place. We wanted to use technology to help countries not only make sure the vaccines could be verified before they reach patients, but also to help put in place basic building blocks for future national traceability systems. Let me really encourage you to look into this verification and traceability initiative. It's really important. It's a great starting place. If you're listening and you're wondering, oh, how can I ever get started with this GS1 traceability effort? And I heard that question earlier. Somebody asked, okay, we have vaccines, but what about all the other medicines? And I thought the answers were great. Start small, start with a few medicines. So I would strongly encourage that you reach out to those running this verification and traceability initiative. Nigeria is doing it, Rwanda is doing it. It would be an excellent way to kick off your national strategy. And we can help put you in touch with the right people to explore options. Next slide, please. So, what is your plan? What are your next steps? I certainly want to invite all of you to take part in the GSC African Traceability Group. Nuran will be able to help connect you up with that. Our next meeting will be mid-June, I think. And so we'll get the word out and I'll make sure that you all receive the invitation. Now, in the meantime, to get us started with your whole national strategy, I want to invite you to fill out a simple questionnaire. I'm going to have it sent to you, okay? I just had it translated into French and we're going to send it out, and it's very basic, but and you can respond to Neuron, and you'll also be able to respond to my friend Annie at the World Bank, who works with me at the World Bank. And this is going to help me and many others understand how you want traceability to begin in your country. So this is you telling us how you want it to go. Together, we'll get things started. So take note of the emails there, and we will work to get that questionnaire out to you, fill it out, and then we can start the conversation. How can we help you? Last slide, please. So let me just wrap up by giving you really some encouragement. You can do this. It seems difficult, it seems complex, one step at a time. You can use global standards for traceability, and it will improve visibility and integrity in your health supply chain. It's going to save lives. It'll help you provide better oversight as regulators. It'll better connect you with the global supply chain. It doesn't matter that you haven't started. That doesn't matter. Or maybe you don't even really understand why it's so important. We're going to learn together so that Africa is not left behind, and so that Francophone Africa is not left behind. So thank you once again. I'm happy to take any questions, happy to continue to participate with this session, and be in touch with us. Let us know how we can help. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Tom, for the great messages, short and sweet message. There's actually one question for you from Giselle. Do we have a global platform to drive alignment or share learnings initiatives, especially for African countries? I think that's an excellent question. Tom.
Yes, so we're putting in place the, let's say, the coordination mechanism, this GS1 African Traceability Group. But we're already talking amongst ourselves, what does that look like? How can we, on a day-to-day basis, provide you guidance? So if you have a question and we're not together in a big group like this, how will you know what to do? We're thinking that we have technology that can put tools on accessible virtually. Some of those are roadmaps. Some of those are examples of national strategies. Some of those might be questions to legal issues, data sharing, all the things that you will encounter have already been encountered by other countries, okay? So we don't need to reinvent the wheel, as we say. I'm sure that translates well to French. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so we're going to place these tools in a single repository that you can draw those down. And this, of course, will be in addition to coming alongside you with technical expertise in various ways. And I think importantly, the peer-to-peer learning. So we're thinking of ways that we can support, say, regulators from Zambia who may want to work with regulators from Ghana, who've already worked with regulators from Nigeria. And in doing that, we think that that's going to help you go faster, because somebody in the African environment can tell you, oh, we tried that and it made our life difficult. And then we learned to do it better this way. And that's what we want to do, is share those learnings, one country from the other. Neuron, is there anything you would add to that kind of platform question? I know we've thought about websites and there are other options, but stay tuned. I really think that we're going to figure something out so that we can make sure that you have all the tools you need.
Definitely. I think, Tom, you covered all of it. Definitely, there's a lot of conversation that is still going on. There's still a lot of work in progress going on. But in the meantime, obviously, if you have any questions, please reach out to me, to anybody that you see that's organizing the summit. There are a lot of resources, a lot of connections that have been made. Unfortunately, DG Moji was, I think, caught up in another meeting today, but she's also a really great resource. She's happy to share. And as you heard during her presentation, there was a lot of GS1 friendly jargon that was used, data matrix, and she used them very eloquently. So of course, there's a lot of information that exists within the continent. So just ask questions, we're here. I think I'll put my email in the chat as well, but I think most of you already have it. But definitely ask questions, and there's a lot of work that is going on. So we have at least 1 more minute. So if anybody has another question for Tom, if you'd like to unmute yourself and talk, ask question in English or in French, that works. Tom speaks a bit of French. You can talk. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts, reactions, anything? Okay, we have.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Sally, we can hear you. Go ahead, Sally.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question earlier, but I have issue with the connection here. I'm currently in Abidjan. So my question is related to the participation of Senegal in this program. As you may know, GS1 Senegal is been operating at least now for 10 years. And I'm really asking, how could we really get more involved? More officially, we have been invited in numbers of meetings and everything, and we really volunteer to be focal point for this global meeting. But still, we are really not pursuing being formally involved in this program. And as you may know, we have very big issue with counterfeiting medicine, and even in the healthcare system in Senegal, we're dealing with a lot of issues. So my question is, how could US aid in Senegal particularly could help us being involved in this issue?
Thank you, Saliu, for your question. We have folks from USAID that will speak later, so perhaps we can put that question for them. But unless, Tom, if you want to maybe share a few reactions to that question.
Yes, I'm happy. Was it Pascal? Is that your name?
That was Saliu from Senegal.
Oh, okay, Saliu. I think it's a great question. And what we can do is probably take stock, fill out this questionnaire that's coming. Okay, I'd like to hear your answers to the very simple questions. That'll tell me how to get started. But one of the keys is we need different donors have different strengths in certain countries. So you may find that Global Fund is very active in one country. USAID is active in another country. The World Bank is, their country office is in, very important in another country. So we want to make sure that we connect the right partners. So that's why getting this information from you will help us go to all the members of the Global Steering Committee. You saw them. They're going to be all the partners that exist in Senegal and many other countries. And we'll connect the dots. We'll put it together for you. And ultimately, though, GS1 Senegal, if you've been around for 10 years, you need to start to take some steps. You need to start to put yourself to the test, okay? It may be incremental, it may be pilots, as Geraldine said, but at some point, you need to put some quality barcoding, that master data on the product and start. Maybe it's 2 products, maybe it's 3 products, but we can help you get started. So I would say fill out the questionnaire. Let us know where you are in your own planning and process, and then we'll connect you up with the partners that can support you in Senegal. But I'm excited that Senegal is interested. That's really important. Big, important country for us, right?
Definitely, Tom. Thank you very much.
Sure.
We're a bit behind on time, Giselle. So if you can please briefly mention your question in less than a minute, Giselle, that would be super. Giselle? Unmute yourself, please. Giselle Poby, TGF. Giselle, any question from you? If you're talking, you're still on mute. 1, 2, 3. Nothing's happening. Okay.
She's from the Global Fund.
I suppose so, based on.
Okay. Yeah, I think she might be. Well, the Global Fund, as many of you know, has this country coordination mechanism. So in every single country, there's a CCM, and that CCM is made up of many nonprofits that are involved in health, and some of them are involved in supply chain. So often the Global Fund in Geneva will refer you to partners within the CCM in that country. So that may be a reference point in the future. We connect you with the Global Fund and they say, here are the partners that are part of our country coordinating mechanism, and you need to get to know those partners. Sometimes it's agencies within the Ministry of Health, sometimes it's nonprofits, and sometimes it's, well, I don't think that they have private sector, but the CCM, country coordinating mechanism, that's your avenue for the Global Fund.
Thank you, Tom, for raising that. And thank you as well for your time and for sharing your perspectives, your thoughts. I think the group will be looking forward to receiving the questionnaire and hopefully then in continuing the engagement through the other platforms that are already set up, but also the more that will be set up. So thank you, Tom. We will then now move on to the next speaker. All right. So now I invite Rami and Swaroop, please, if you can activate your videos, and Kimara, if you can go to the next slide where both Rami and Swaroop will introduce themselves and then get into the presentation. Rami, over to you. And Swaroop.
Thank you, Nuran. So I think I introduced myself early in the opening of the summit, and I hope that you are enjoying the various presentations till now. So quickly, I'm Senior Information Technology Advisor within USAID, and I have been championing the adoption of the GS1 standard over the last several years. And I would like to share with you some of the perspective about the adoption of the GS1, and specifically when we start talking about systems and implication of country. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And I will hand it over to Swaroop, and where he can do the introduction at this point. So I'll be jointly presenting with Swaroop. So if you don't mind, Swaroop will make the introduction when we start your part. So next slide. So today in this presentation, I really would like to summarize where our interest started with the GS1 and what kind of challenges we have been seeing several years ago. And this is where it took us to the GS1 adoption journey. Talk to you also from the USAID perspective, what were the different stages of the GS1 adoption, and then talk after that about how to start building the foundation for traceability and for digital supply chain transformation in general. So if we can go to the next slide. So mainly what we have been observing over the years, that now there is more and more level of automation, more and more systems have been implemented in three main domains. One, in the regulatory aspect. So we have multiple regulatory information system like drug registration. We have also other set of systems focusing on supply chain like the ELMSs, ERP, and so on. And lastly, we have the third domain about digital health information system and all of the patient-related system. What is currently the situation has been for over the years that within all of these three sets of systems, they are defining a product in a different way. They have a different identification for a product, which basically making it very difficult to make the linkage between these different systems. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is both the situation at the global level as the same at the country level, that each of the system, each of the donors having their own system, having their own identification of the product. Next slide. So this lack of standardization of the product identification is resulted in many challenges. It resulted in inaccuracy in planning with different identity for the product. It's difficult to get data from multiple systems. It provides use inefficiency. It makes this system more difficult for the interoperability between them. It also provide us with poor end-to-end visibility, and it's difficult to track and trace commodities. And next slide. So in general, we're still seeing that in this space of information system, we still see fragmentation in terms of the information system themselves. They are more developed in stovepipe approach. We see sometimes duplication, and then we see a lack of interoperability. And next slide. So this is always a driver of why we find that adoption of a global standard is very critical to address this issue. And we started, USAID started this journey from 2014, as we can see, and we moved to like 3 stages. So I will go with you about what was happening in each of the stage and what the characteristic and where we are now. So next slide, please. So the first stage, it was mainly more a discovery and consultation. We didn't know. We know that they have a problem. We know that adopting global standards should be helping our problem, but it was very vague terminology. It has a lot of detail when we start to introduce to GS1. We didn't know exactly what should be the appropriate timeline, what we can mandate. So we had a lot of consultation with industry. We did pilot for barcoding with Pakistan and Ethiopia. And it took us from 2014 until 2017, where USAID issued what we call a technical directive memo, where it required now that all of the USAID procured commodity should be using the GS1 standard with a roadmap and well-defined milestone over multiple years. And next slide. And this is where the next stage, which we were focusing from USAID and in terms of the USAID procured commodity, and including this in the PSM contracts with suppliers. This is where we have defined 4 phases with multiple timelines, starting from the first phase, where we're required for the product to have the global trade item identification, and then the second phase is to start sharing the product master, and then one of the most important milestones was in June 2020. This is where we requested the GS1 barcode at the secondary package, and this is one of the reasons also that you're going to see now majority of the USAID procured commodity that's coming to the country having the GS1 barcode, and then the last phase, it was focusing more on the serialization. Next slide. And again, this is a list from the PSM website. This is from the multiple manufacturer and supplier who has been conforming to GS1 requirement in their contract with PSM for USAID procured commodity. And next slide. So in addition to what has been done from the USAID procured commodity, USAID has also been also supporting country in their traceability regulation. This is where now what's owned by the country in terms of developing their own policies start to have their own traceability system. And you can find in this map that multiple countries started this initiative, either from the policy side, from having traceability roadmap and strategy to start actually building some foundation for a traceability system. Next slide. And as I mentioned, that now, which is very critical from the country perspective, that they can see now like maybe 80% of the commodity that arrive to a country is already having a GS1 barcode, and this should be putting countries in a good place where they can now start actually getting the benefits of the barcoding and of implementing traceability system. And again, I'm sure that this is mentioned before, but I think that the whole idea here that the barcode and the product identification, this is what printed from the manufacturer and then used across all of the supply chain. Several countries in the past, when they want to start having barcode, the only option that they have to start printing their own barcode, which is definitely not a best practice and not a recommended approach. We want to depend on the barcode that is printed from the manufacturer and the identification that is used by the manufacturer, and then it becomes has meaning across all of the supply chain. Next slide. So this is where we start the third and the most interesting phase, and this is where, again, the phase that is more owned by the country now, is how to support and how the GS1 implementation and adopting standard can support the overall digital health transformation, and how we can build the foundation of this digital transformation through having GS1 based national product catalog, and how it can be implemented and how it can be interacted with the legacy system. And at this point, I would like to hand it over to Saroop, and also to give you, Saroop, a chance to introduce yourself and take it from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Rami. Hello, everyone. My name is Swaroop Jayaprakash. I am a senior managing consultant with IBM, but I've been working with USAID GHSC PSM program. And I've worked very closely with Rami and several of the MIS and these standardization initiatives. Thanks for the organizers for having me here. If you can go to the slide, if you can continue that slide. I just wanted to quickly play an introductory video to National Product Catalog Initiative. This is linking back to what Rami was just sharing in the last slide about actually implementing some of these initiatives. And this particular video talks about this initiative and the effort we put in 3 countries in 2020 and 2021. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the technical details after this video. Go ahead.
Pharmaceutical commodities are defined by important information such as description, details about the manufacturer, product strength, dosage, and shelf life. This information is often referred to as product master data. Access to consistent and accurate product master data is critical to helping build trust across the global supply chain. Trust in this data enables participating entities to manage their functions effectively and patients to utilize health services with confidence. An absence of reliable product master data can result in inefficient operations, inaccurate planning and forecasting, and ultimately, poor end-to-end visibility and decision-making. An estimated 70 to 80% of medical commodities ship with GS1 barcodes. However, supply chain personnel often lack access to standardized product master data to understand what the barcodes reveal. This contributes to inefficient operations. When central medical stores and health facilities maintain their own non-standardized master data, this results in poor stock visibility across the board. This hinders planning and forecasting, including the ability to quickly respond to exceptions such as stockouts. An online national product catalog is an ideal way to provide and maintain access to accurate product information and to help ensure supply chain efficiency. All entities within the supply chain will access the catalog to obtain consistent and accurate product information provided directly by the manufacturers. All supply chain users, including patients, can access the catalog through the mobile app. The Ethiopian Food and Drug Administration, Malawi Ministry of Health, and Rwanda Food and Drug Authority started initiatives in 2020 to implement national product catalogs. Each catalog has more than 200 global trade item numbers mapped with country identifiers. The catalogs continue to grow. More countries and manufacturers embracing global standards through the use of standardized product information means better supply chain decision-making and planning around the world, leading to better service and health outcomes for patients.
Thanks. If you can go back to the slide. Thank you. If you can go to, yeah, the next slide, please. I think a couple of slides behind. So that video was talking about the initiative it took up in 2020 and 2021. I just wanted to quickly share some of the key aspects of that initiative. But before I jump into the details about the initiative and how we implemented it, I wanted to reiterate what, even in the video, it mentioned about what product master data is about, what it includes. I think the very first step we took in each of these countries was to advocate the importance of product master data and how it is important for something like traceability. So as you saw in the video as well, it includes basic information about the product, including description, if it's a medicine, its dosage, strength, etc., shelf life, even volumetrics data, etc. And this information is used across all supply chain entities, right from manufacturers, shippers, regulators, all the way to patients, even when it's being dispensed. And it's also being used in all the processes across the supply chain, right from planning, managing the inventory, distribution, and even if a medicine or a product needs to be recalled, as well as in insurance claims and other financial transactions. So as you can see, this information is critical for the entire supply chain as they function to get physical commodities delivered to patients. If you can go to the next slide, please. So keeping that in mind and making sure that this becomes a foundational effort when countries take up key MIS initiatives towards traceability. We, in 2019-2020, we worked on an initiative that was funded by USAID jointly with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop an open source tool that will help countries manage standardized product master data, but also help share the data with other systems, improving interoperability and helping improve the transactions, supply chain transactions in general. If you can go to the next slide. So this tool was built on a platform called Akinio. Akinio has a community edition, which is an open source platform. Basically, this tool helps organize standardized data, such as GS1 identifiers, GTINs, and GS1 attributes, but it also helps map those standardized identifiers to any country-specific identifiers. So that helps country adopt GS1 identifiers and GS1 standards without disrupting their operations and continuing to use their existing identifiers. Of course, in the future, when they have all products having GTINs and they have transitioned to having all of their country identifiers linked to GTINs, they can choose to completely switch over to using GTINs. But this is an effort to help them transition to that. PCMT can be used as a national product catalog tool in countries that choose to use this tool. It's an open source tool, so there's no subscription fees as such, but there is an effort involved in contextualizing the tool for countries' needs. If you can go to the next slide. So this tool is one of the primary objectives of this tool is to help adopt GS1 standards and also adopt the GS1 methodologies across identify, capture, share, and use data. Next slide, please. And this is typical architecture that we have envisioned in these countries. And if in the future other countries want to adopt into this kind of an architecture utilizing National Product Catalog, basically the tool helps collect standardized data and helps with any data enrichment specific to the country, helps with data governance, standardization, and distributing that data across other systems that you see on the right, including your logistics systems, WMS, HMIS, and even private sector systems. And if the country has an interoperability layer, it can exchange that data through that layer. You could also have a web-based catalog that is publicly accessible. In addition to that, one thing that is missing in this architecture diagram is you can also have a mobile app, if you remember what was mentioned in the video. And that could give access to the public to scan GTINs and understand the details of the product. And this system can take in data from manufacturers directly or from global data synchronization network data pool providers. Next slide. NPC is now incorporated into the OpenHIE architecture. So the PCMT tool represents a reference implementation for the product registry that was recently included as part of the registry services. Next slide, please. As you can see, National Product Catalog, and this was mentioned by Rami in his slide as well, different systems tend to maintain their own identifiers. This tool helps map all those different identifiers with standardized GTIN. So that way it helps continue with your operations with minimal disruption, but it also helps link and establish and organize standardized attributes in addition to GTINs. So this gives a smooth transition from using country-specific identifiers to globally standardized identifiers. Next slide, please. This is just an extension of how NPC could help in the overall operations. Right from when the manufacturer ships the commodities, regulatory authorities need to do some importation process or registration process. The data that is there in NPC can help regulatory authorities use the standardized identifiers that are available on physical packages and link to their registration number or any other identifiers that the regulatory authority uses. Similarly, central medical stores can use the standard identifiers on the labels to receive automatically, and the same way downstream facilities can use it to identify and trace commodities, and the same can be used during dispensing as well. So that's how GTINs and standardized identifiers along with GTINs can help improve your operations while also linking those with existing identifiers so that you don't have to completely revise your product identification mechanism. Next slide, please. So just briefly talking about the initiative, which was also mentioned in the video. We did this initiative in 2020 and 2021. It was mainly done in Ethiopia, Malawi, and Rwanda. The objective was to implement a national product catalog. One was the technology aspect, but also it included the process and the policy side of things as well. So far in these countries, we've collected over 200 plus GTINs, and it's a continuous process, and they're collecting more GTINs as we speak. Those GTINs, as they collect, they are mapped to country-specific product identifiers. We're also in the process of developing a mobile app. The Android version has already been rolled out in Malawi, and it's about to be rolled out in Rwanda. An iOS version will also follow soon. That will help scan GTINs and help public or any user to identify products. In Rwanda, they're also planning to use this mobile app to use for serial number traceability. What Tom Woods was talking about in his earlier slide about verification and traceability. So they're planning to use this mobile app for that purpose as well. In addition to that, they also established a key position called catalog manager within the regulatory authority to manage the master data. Next slide, please. And as a follow-on to the National Product Catalog Initiative in 2021, we had an effort to consolidate various GTINs from different countries that are already collecting GTINs to build an open product catalog data set. The objective was this data set could become a starter list for countries taking up an initiative such as National Product Catalog. And you can refer to this data set on this link here, and you'll find more details about how to use the data set. Next slide, please. And in addition to that, I'll leave you with these resources. These links take you to the National Product Catalog documents and artifacts, including aspects about people, technology, data, and policy. This is available on GHSC Global Supply Chain webpage. And if you have any questions, you could reach out to us through this email ID as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Swaroop. Thank you, Rami, for sharing your thoughts. That was quite an interesting conversation. The link to the video that Swaroop shared is available in the chat, but obviously the contact information and other information will be available to you in the slide deck shared. I haven't seen any question pop up in the chat, so perhaps maybe we'll just use 1 or 2 minutes just to ask questions. And maybe while you are thinking about your question, the National Product Catalog is really an important building block. So if you recall from Geraldine's earlier presentation, you need data, and the National Product Catalog does just that. It gives you the data that helps inform, or rather simply put, it helps you answer the question, what exactly am I tracking and tracing within my country, within the country? So we'll hear a little bit more about this one over, I think, towards tomorrow, day 2. But this was just supposed to give you a brief introduction. All right, I do not see anyone chatting or anyone raising their hands. No question. There are no questions. Okay, so with this, okay, there's a question from Saliu. So Saliu, briefly, if you can just ask your questions. You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, very quickly, from a technical standpoint, if we have to set up a national catalog for pharmaceutical products, do we need, what the link with this catalog and the one we are working right now on Activate with GS1? For those who are at GS1, they are very familiar with that. And my question is to know if we need to design a new catalog, we can find a way to mix it with what we have already been doing. Because as you may know, we are working at this time at GS1 Senegal a lot with product, with food, the food industry. Is that something different? Do we need to rebuild something totally new, or I don't know? I mean, this is my first question. The second one is, all of these things really in our countries are dealing with legal framework. Is there any recommendation? Is there any requirement from that standpoint before building? Because technically we know how to do it, but do we need to go through a regulation? I heard earlier that the World Health Organization involved. Do we have any standards, regulation that we can use as a guideline to start this process? Those are questions from someone very new on this business, so I need to understand more the issue at stakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandhu, for your question. Rami, I see your hand raised, so please go ahead, and then feel free to jump in as well. Thank you.
So I quickly am going to try to answer the couple of questions. So the first one, yes, many countries have their own initiative for identifying products with their own ID. But if you would like to follow the global standard, and again, the idea is the product identification is what the manufacturer identify and what's printed in the package. So if you're going to get a package that have a barcode from a GS1 barcode, you have to be able to understand what is this global identifiers. And this is the whole idea of having national product catalog. So it will have the standards part. We also realize, and this is why we are recommending using one of these tools for building national product catalog, that it may not be practical that immediately you switch all of the code that you have to use the global one. So part of the functionality of this tool that it can help mapping between the global standards and this global identifier with what some of your current system are using, until the point will come where you can depend completely on the global identifier. So this is where I think the importance of having the tool to facilitate any mapping between what you have and also at the same time moving to the global trend, which will be only the code that's printed on your packaging. Regarding the second question, normally there is two ways for the manufacturers to be to move and printed the GS1 barcode standards is either through a regulation or through a procurement or contract clause. So several countries are in a process or already have a regulation to require the mandate of using global standards and to have the identification and barcoding for the commodity that's coming to the country. But this will take longer time. So again, you can tackle it either from a procurement perspective and a procurement requirement and or from a regulatory. Ideally, it will be from a regulation, but also we recognize regulation can take much longer time and you don't need to waste. There is a lot of things that you can do before, until having the regulation in place. So I'll stop here and see if there's any follow-up question or if anyone would like to add to that. So.
Thank you for that, Rami. That's really helpful and straight to the point. So understanding that we're behind, well, I think we're over time already, but I see DRC has a question. So DRC, please, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question, that would be helpful. DRC? Sorry, there's a bit of an echo from DRC, but please, if you can ask again, if you can ask the question.
Oui, je voudrais savoir si vous avez prévu dans ces systèmes la gestion, la prévention ou bien la résolution de conflits.
Okay, Rami, Sarup, that's a question for you. Whether I think it's repetition duplications are addressed in this system, or how the system avoids duplication. That's my interpretation of the question. Rami, Sarup. Question from Congo.
Sarup would like to take this question, or you want
yeah, sure, Rami. Yeah, one of the things these countries, especially Ethiopia, Malawi, and Rwanda, where we did this initiative, one of the things that they did was to make sure that the catalog, the identifiers that they already had, and this kind of touches upon the earlier question about whether we need to redo the catalog as well. So the identifiers that they had, there were some duplications in the country managed identifiers. So the very first step was to make sure that that data is cleaned. And we were, as Rami said, it is not practical to quickly switch to GTINs because a lot of products don't have GTINs. So we did map as a first step after cleaning this data that they already had to remove any duplications and map that data to globally identified numbers such as GTINs. Now, when we start using GTINs, typically those GTINs map, in the process of mapping as well, we realize if there are any duplications. So that also helps us eliminate a lot of duplications. And the tool also, the technology itself is built in a way that it doesn't allow duplications as long as you configure identifiers as unique identifiers. So the tool automatically takes care of the duplication. So there are multiple levels in which you can accomplish address that challenge.
Thank you for sharing that, Sarup. So hopefully, Congo, that gives you an answer, the RDC team, the RC team. So again, thank you all for staying on. I see there's still a few more questions, but since this is the last session, so we will take one. I feel there's one more question from Togo. Togo, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Merci. Et la question de l'équipe du Togo, c'est que nous avons compris que les produits de l'USAID sont déjà dans le système GS1.
si nous voulons mettre en place ce système au Togo, en commençant par les produits de santé de l'USAID, quels sont donc les préalables? Merci.
Thank you for the question, Sarup Rami. That's a question from Togo, and they would like to understand what they need to do in order to put in place such a system. That's from Togo.
So sorry, Nurana, this is you want me to answer?
It's a question for both Togo, what they can do to use the system. Basically, I think that was my.
So I think that the starting point is really like when we share the slide here, there is a lot of resources about the tool, the process, what's need to be done. And feel free always to reach out to us and to Nuran and GS1 to go in any more details. And tomorrow will be also very critical days because several countries will be sharing what they did about National Product Catalog and how they started. So again, I really encourage you to ask as many questions as you can during this couple of days, and then feel free to reach out to us and we can go to more specific if Togo have an interest to go further. So, thank you.
Thank you for keeping it short and sweet, Rami. So of course, yeah, there's a market, just reach out for more information. All right, Saliu, a question from you.
Yes, I want to piggyback on this question because it raises another issue, as you may know, in our region in West Africa. The counterfeiting medicines is a regional issue. And my question is, instead of approaching the question country by country, it really be more strategic to see how we can develop a regional system, because most of the medicine we're receiving, for example, in Senegal, are coming from other countries. So my question is there a way to address this question at the regional level? Is the system designed to work at the regional level, knowing that we have a big issue? Because for your information, at the ECOWAS, they tried to set up a regional GS1, but it was not technically possible. And it was a way for them to address this kind of issue. Now my question is there a way, a possibility to have this system at the regional level with national focal points at country level?
Interesting question, Rami. So you go ahead first. I have some thoughts as well to share.
Just very quickly, I think from a system perspective and technical side, yes, definitely. I think the biggest challenge is more in terms of the governance, the policy side, and what will be the framework that coordinate the regional effort in this. So it is not a technical problem, it is more of a policy problem. But yeah, if there is a will and mechanism to establish something for a region, I think this will be really, really much more beneficial and much more efficient from my perspective than do it country by country. But Nuran, I know that you have thoughts, so please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Rami. But I see Tom has raised his hand, so Tom, perhaps you should go first. Perhaps you have the same thought that I want to share. So go ahead.
A couple of thoughts on that, Saliu, because I agree. The problem of counterfeit medicines is regional, and clearly illicit medicines flow across borders, okay? So one thing that the World Bank invests in and has done for some time is African medicine regulatory harmonization. Okay, so all the regulators of the region have been harmonizing policies, whether it's registration of product, but I think more attention could be paid to this issue of falsified medicines, substandard quality medicines, and diverted medicines. Okay, so there is an existing coordination platform, African Medicine Regulatory Harmonization, which is actually chaired by NAFDAC Prof. Adeyeye. Okay, so that's one thing. But when it comes to a regional approach for traceability, that's exactly what we're on to here. That's why we set up the GS1 Africa Traceability Group. So that's where we really want to think about equipping all the countries, because the issue becomes one country is moved quickly, one country is moving slower. How do we bring them all together? So we need a common standard, a common capability. That's why the global standards are important. You can't have Senegal doing one thing and Ghana doing another. They have to be able to speak to each other. Okay, so that's why global traceability standards that we use in Africa and everybody uses the same standard is critical. Okay, and then we can begin to coordinate on the legal issues, the policy issues. And there, I think there is room for additional collaboration around enforcement activities. Frankly, it's, you know, if you think about it, it's like a balloon. If you squeeze it in Ghana, it'll pop out in Togo. Or if you squeeze it in Nigeria, it'll pop out in Niger. So we need cross-border coordination. That's a bigger question than we're going to deal with today. But certainly your point's well made. It needs to be a regional approach. And the economic blocks like ECOWAS, I think, are an essential coordinating kind of platform for doing that at the political level. Nuran, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Spot on, Tom. You actually touched on exactly what I wanted to mention. And I see we also have another comment in the chat that exactly talks about the same thing, that really using these existing bodies that are harmonizing the regional efforts. Like we already have many platforms that the regulators are speaking. So it's really using those platforms to then also incorporate such conversations. So I'm really happy we're talking about this already today. As I think Rami mentioned, we're going to have a lot more sharing regarding the topic of national product catalog. We're going to hear a lot more from other countries. And I think on the last day, we're going to have a more open dialogue as well on these matters. So really, this is a cue for you. First, thanking you for joining and staying this late. We're 20 minutes over, but also please join as well tomorrow and the day after to really talk about and strategize and come out with actions that will help us move forward as a region on this topic. So thank you to our speakers for the second part of today. It was really helpful, insightful, and I hope that the participants were able to follow along and found the conversations and deliberations helpful and useful. So with this, I'd like to hand over. First, thank you as well for your attention. I would like to hand over to Wanda, who will then wrap up today and talk us about what's next. Wanda, over to you.
Thanks so much, Nuran. And hello, everyone. What a truly great start to the 2022 Francophone Africa GS1 Healthcare Summit. I want to thank the GS1 Global Office and USAID and its Global Health Supply Chain Technical Assistance Francophone Task Order for bringing us together and for the great learning shared today. We covered much on day one to lay a strong foundation for understanding global standards in healthcare and pharmaceutical traceability. Our mission is so important. We do this for the safety of patients and to save lives, and for the visibility, integrity, and efficiency of the health supply chain to get the right product in the right place at the right time. We've learned from our speakers today that the journey to traceability is a marathon and not a sprint, that it's a series of small steps in a bigger process with a great return on investment. And as I quote from one speaker, it's really worth doing. And that also there's a lot of support from different organizations, and there are a lot of resources that countries can rely on to help them with their own strategy. So the interactions and participation today have truly been excellent. This is exactly what we had hoped for, a real sharing of lessons learned and opportunities to ask questions and share advice. So I ask you to please bring that same level of curiosity and engagement to day 2 tomorrow. You'll hear even more examples from countries and how they kickstarted their implementation of their pharmaceutical traceability systems. You saw today we heard from Nigeria, and tomorrow we have Rwanda, Benin, and Ethiopia who will be talking about their national product catalogs, which we were introduced to in the very last session. So please bring your energy, your enthusiasm, and until then, please stay safe and healthy. Thank you for joining us today and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow. Have a lovely evening, rest of your day.